space that generally exists in the south portion of the property as well. Additionally, beyond the unit's size and the amenity package, there was this, again, question and consideration around the financial impacts of the property itself. As we've talked before, when we dealt with the Sterling property to the south, there will be an impact in terms of the fiscal revenue generated by the property to the city as you're changing from a commercial land use to a residential land use. That has a impact on the types of revenues that are generated from the property. We would fully anticipate that, similar to the Sterling property, that with this conversion, the base value of the property will go up substantially. These hotel properties have a relatively low value, just the nature of their age and their function in terms of income producing. So we would anticipate a pretty substantial increase in the base property tax, but the situation in this case is because of our structure, with it being multifamily residential, the residential rollback will bring down that increase pretty dramatically. So on the whole, we would anticipate that the property value will go up. The property taxes paid will be about the same as it's currently situated. The primary difference in terms of the revenue structures to the city will be associated with the change from the hotel to multifamily residential, in that there will not be any additional hotel motel tax generated from the property. In this particular case, this property is not likely generating a substantial amount of hotel motel tax because it is a very traditional extended stay type of facility where the hotel motel tax is reduced after a certain amount of days of occupancy. There will be some offsets around the population in terms of road use tax, sales tax, other things. So on the whole, we would anticipate that the fiscal impact will be about neutral, potentially slightly reduction in our revenues, but not a material change with the conversion. So overall, the primary question before you tonight is the issue of land use. Is this particular property conducive for multifamily residential? From a staff perspective, we've had a number of discussions over the years talking about the value and the potential of introducing residential into commercial spaces. The concepts are really in those conversations around mixed uses. For the most part, this is obviously a little different connotation to that, but it is similar to what you had to deal with the Sterling property. That was strictly a straight proposed PUD to accommodate residential land use within the commercial-based zoning. It was, to this point, deemed to be a very successful conversion. We have no doubt that the developer of that property, which is the developer that's proposing on this property, will do the same with this property. I think their motivations and their involvement in the Sterling conversion will translate pretty well to this property as well. The primary question is, from staff's perspective, is not the question of land use, but the capacity of the land or capacity of the project to facilitate that quality and affordable housing component for the city on a long-term basis. I think that generally sums up the questions and concerns that the Planning and Zoning Commission wrestled with. And again, I think that's why they came to you with a recommendation of a little bit of a split vote, which is generally unusual for the group. But it is a tough property. It is a unique proposition. And that's ultimately what they thought was most appropriate to bring back for you tonight. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions that you might have, or the developer can certainly share their vision for the property and answer any additional questions you might have as well.
Questions on this side of the table? This side?
Quick question
Eric.
for Chief. Chief, real quick, you know, with the Sterling, we had a lot of calls. It was a drag on our services. What's the traffic width on the Clive Hotel?
This is not a problem property. In the last 12 months, we've only had 15 calls for service, which I don't know how many units are currently in there, but that seems to be a very low number for that number of units.
Other questions for Doug? Well, if not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearing. Before we do so, is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to address the council on this issue? Please identify yourself with your name and address for the record.
Jason Grove with Grove Holdings.
Hi, Tina Smothers, Integrated Asset Management.
So thanks for your time tonight. We greatly appreciate it. I'd like to say that I've had an opportunity to talk to a few of the council members individually about the project, and you would get our 100% support in this project, just like we did with the Sterling Hotel. Between Tina and I, we have 50 to 60 years in the multifamily world, and we feel very confident in this property. Tina has a few stats that I didn't have from our previous meeting with P&Z that I wanted to share with you guys, and I wanted her to share. The Sterling Hotel, we feel very closely compares to this from the standpoint of it has 84 studios in that property. This hotel has 120 total units. And of the 120 units, there is roughly 60, 70, or no, I'm sorry, 84 studios.
84 studios at the
84
Vibe.
studios. Oh, that was at the
At the
Vibe. I'm
Vibe,
sorry.
yeah.
So it's about the same at the Clive Hotel as well. In our pro forma for the Clive or for the Sterling and the Vibe, we were anticipating that project would take 2 years to fully stabilize, finish our construction rehab process, lease all the units because it was 100% vacant at that time. And we did it all in 6 months. We had 112 leases signed in 6 months, really off of radio advertisement. It was an incredible draw to that property, really large demand in this area. And I think some of the stats that Tina has here for the area shows, what a need for workforce housing there is in this space. So
One thing just to tag off what Jason said, if you didn't hear our radio advertising, the tagline was there's a new vibe in Clive. So Clive got a lot of recognition for it. We had a really big radio budget that did well. One thing I just want to touch on, I've been doing multifamily for many years, is in the area, Clive, Windsor Heights, and Urbandale, many of the units that are online are the garden level, which is, not unique to the Midwest. However, with the garden level apartments, you have stairs because you go up or down when you walk in. So those, you're limiting your renter in those. Many people can't do the stairs. There may be a need for an elevator. There may be a need for just modifications to make them ADA, and that's not going to happen in the garden level, which is primarily what is in the municipalities here that we have. So what would be unique about this project is obviously it's got the elevators, it's a high rise, it's one of the only ones in the area, if the project came through, that would be able to provide the ADA. We're doing the project with no funding, just our funding, and so there's not going to be the restrictions on the rents. However, we are looking at the workforce housing for the rents, which would be very similar to what we did in Clive for the rent amount and the amount that they would need to make per year to qualify to live there. We do run the background checks and so forth, just like we presented on the Vibe project as well. And then I just wanted to add to what Jason said, we're local management. I own the management company. We're local owners. We both have a large presence in the area. We try to stay in the community. And I think that that's just really important to point out, that it's not somebody coming in who's going to build and go. And we'll really make sure that the project's maintained because our names are on it, as well as with the Clive in the area. We also do try to participate in the crime-free housing program as well. And with the square footage of the apartments that are in the Clive Hotel right now, we found when doing market surveys all through the metro, most new builders are building at around 400, 450 square foot. So they're not too far off from that. But I think we have a unique concept that we shared, I believe, with planning and zoning on the floor plans to do some smaller kitchens that would still have all the amenities that most places would have, but it's just going to be a smaller size, allowing them then the living area for if they do work from home or bedroom / living room area. So not too far off on the square footages with those.
And one other item that I'd like to talk about is, so if I could build something like this, I would build studios. Perhaps maybe I would make them larger than 265 square foot for the 24 units that are there. But it wouldn't be much more than that, but you can't. I simply can't. I have land that I could build on right now, and you can't pencil it out. It costs too much for time, material, the labor, the material that goes into it has been priced out of workforce housing. And in Waukee, we have land that we could put up additional 50 to 60 units on, and we looked at those for studios, thinking studios, you could get the biggest bang for your buck for construction costs. And we would have to charge up to $1,300, $1,400 for each unit in order to provide the same margin that we would get on this property that we can repurpose and only charge a $750, $850 rent per month. So I say that is getting creative to find ways to provide workforce housing for a much needed segment of our population. Obviously, the Sterling Hotel needed it. We had 112 units that rented out in less than 6 months. And we really feel confident that this would attract that same attention too.
One thing I just wanted to add really quick that I forgot to mention, of our 84 units at the Vibe, I pulled the stats on those. We've only got 5 units that have 2 occupants in them. The rest are 1. So just kind of, again, backing the square footage, it seems to be ample for what the need is when we go in and walk and things like that. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Before you step down,
Yeah.
does council have any questions? Ted?
Well, I'll let others, I do, but I know others have as well, so.
Well,
Sure. So I think the question I'll present is, I'm just going to ask it. I don't know if I should or not, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, we talked about this a little bit. I'm concerned about a little bit about how much you're able to invest into this for the remodel and kind of the repurposing aspect because of, some of the financials that are going into acquiring it in the first place. Right. And, we talked about this, right? I'm not here to make the current owners whole or to get them a profit. Right. I want to make sure that this is the right move for the residents of Clive. So I was wondering, there were some points that Doug brought up and P&Z brought up about the like the dog run and the amenities on site, things like that. Are those things that you have the ability to do regardless of that price, or would that require renegotiation of that price point? Like, I just want to understand if those additional amenities are tied to something else happening as a prerequisite.
No, we could do all of those amenities that we talked about, adding a fitness center in the lobby area. The lobby area is bigger than it needs to be just for a common gathering space. So we're going to use a portion of that for a fitness center. At the Vibe, we added a dog wash station. There's a room that we that the tenants use as a dog wash station, and they use it. It gets used all the time. It's people are very happy to have it. We have an outdoor patio area that would be part of this project now, based on some feedback that we got from the P&Z board. And that will be a 25 by 30 foot, 25 by 25, 30 by 30 area on the southeast corner of the parking lot, or I'm sorry, of the building on the southwest corner of the parking lot, without taking any additional parking spaces out. There is a laundry. We have laundry facilities that we're adding to each floor. Right now, those facilities are only on 3 floors, so we have that all planned in as part of this budget planning.
Any parks or playgrounds or dog, kind of dog run
Oh,
areas?
yeah, dog run on the south end of the property with some benches and grilling area, that type of thing. Parks, I don't know if there is a space potentially on the south end of the property. We have to find out exactly where those public utilities are right there. There's electric and sewer, I believe, that runs as a public utility on that south end of the parking lot. The dog run seemed to be pretty feasible, knowing that you can move a chain link fence fairly quick or replace, or if you have to upgrade those facilities.
And then also a bike storage as well, which is an easy amenity to add, but being the location of it by the trail. So that would be another amenity as well.
So the only other comment I'll make is I do appreciate like kind of the workforce housing and the cost aspect of that. I get that the financials make it tough. And I think there is a need for it, but yeah, I do still have some concern over the size, but I'm not overly concerned, I guess, on those smaller units.
So, yeah, I mean, I've got a few questions. First of all, I appreciate the project. You and I have talked and I like your vision. As I mentioned to you, you have full credibility with me, I think with many of the others based off your track record. You guys have done a great job, not just here, but around the metro. And so I have full confidence that you would do a good job on this project. That's not my concern with this. So the studios are 265 square feet, is that right?
Correct.
What are they at the Vibe again?
There's 2 different kinds of studios, sizes of studios. And the small studio is 495 or 500.
I think it's 447 and then
447.
495 maybe.
Okay.
Is that,
Point being, the pretty substantial difference between those two, right? So again, I'm not so concerned about the quality that you guys will do. What I'm concerned about is the next developer that comes along. I understand there's financial challenges with trying to find the right property to make the pro forma work, right? So I get that, but if the economy tanks, if someone gets desperate and they're looking to offload it, and we've set that precedent, and now we have someone who's not as responsible and is maybe an out-of-state developer, right? That just wants to create a profit center for themselves. That could be problematic for us in the long term. So I get the workhouse or workforce housing. We definitely absolutely have a need for that. This could help fill part of that gap, and so I like it. I want to figure out a way to make it work. But that gives me pause, and that's why I have some hesitancy. And then, we all want to think that the clientele is all going to be young professionals. It's going to be teachers and firefighters and managers and things of that nature. And certainly, I'm sure a level that has a level of truth. But when you're talking about such a small footprint for units, we could also be looking at transient type of clientele. And again, that just gives me some hesitation with respect to this project. So I want to figure out a way to get to yes, because I like it. I like the vision, and I do think it fills a need. But I just have some hesitations and some concerns that I still need to work through in order to get to yes. So.
Anything from you, Eric?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, again, appreciate, guys, you've got a great record. Appreciate everything you've done. No question for me whatsoever based upon your previous developments right there. So no questions whatsoever. Couple quick questions here, and I'll share some concerns with you. Have you sold any of your properties that you developed yet?
No, nope.
and don't plan to.
And yeah, there are no plans to at this moment. So long, all of them are looked at as long-term hold properties, and this is as well.
Appreciate that. You know, love what you did with Sterling right now. It's obviously that's huge for Clive and for the local business community. One of the differences, I think, to me was that, you know, with the Sterling, you know, we had issues with that. We had a lot of problems with that. It was a real drain on the city. There's constantly problems right there. And one of the reasons that I asked Chief and I appreciate those is that we don't currently have problems with the current situation with Clive Hotel. So do we want to be proactive in this rezoning? Do we want to be reactive to it? So for me, I'm not there yet with looking at a situation right there. We're establishing a precedent for other hotels, maybe that are growing older, that could be developed by someone else without your reputation, without where you guys are. So I have an issue with that from a precedent setting perspective, looking at future development with other older properties here in Clive. The other issue is that when I look at this, is this something we, you know, and again, I like the vision with workforce housing. I like the vision, but is this the right property at the right place for that? And you know, I struggle with that. It's a situation where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And sometimes when you want to do something like this, you set that precedent. Do we want to go down that road right there? We could be open to future precedents with other developers or other situations right there. We box ourselves in as a council based upon those precedents sometimes. So when I look at decisions like this, I look at right now, I look at 5 years, I look at 20 years, what's in the best overall interest. And I understand that Barta Holdings, it's in their best interest to sell, no doubt about that. And your pro forma says it's in your best interest as well. Then the question I have to ask myself is that the best interest for the local business area? Is it the best long-term interest for that particular area? Strip along, I'm on Hickman Road right there. And some of those are some of the issues that I struggle with.
Sure.
Susan?
I have a couple comments and a pretty easy question, I think. I think it's a great place for housing, quite honestly, almost even better than the Vibe, because it's right next door to Genesis Health Club, which is a nice amenity. It's so close to Greenbelt Landing and all the trails along there to the library, which would be a huge asset in my mind. And it's just got some other options for stopping by Starbucks and other things right there. My only question is, and I did have one other comment, and that is, I'd wondered a little bit about the size of the units, but did some research on that and found some very compelling recommendations that you can go as low as 200 and still serve the needs of occupants pretty well, which definitely seems small, but there were very good arguments for encouraging all of us to kind of get used to something different than we've become accustomed to and understanding how people can live. So I feel really comfortable about that. The easy question was, I don't think there is a DART stop. And it seems like it would be nice to be able to work with DART to encourage one there.
I believe there is one in the
Is there?
parking lot.
It is a park and ride. Actually, their parking lot or the frontage road there is a park and ride location for the express route that goes along Hickman, starts at out by Nebraska or NFM. That's where it starts, goes along Hickman. This is a stop here, actually, right in front of the hotel.
Is one of them on the cut?
That's a good question. I don't know if it is. But it is currently a location, then it continues east on Hickman.
I
I
wrote
do
that
think it
one
is
time.
one that's on the cut.
That's on the cut. Well, that would be worth keeping in mind to try to keep it. But
Well, there's no negotiating. I mean, Anything
Anyway.
else, Susan? on-
No, no.
Michael, do you have anything?
Yeah, can you give me an example in town where there's, 265 square foot is small? Right? So just kind of, so I can envision another location close by of 260 square foot apartments.
There's not going to be any that are going to be that size. I think there's two different sizes of studios at the Clive Hotel project, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but 265 and then 336 is the other one.
But if we can't get to 265, can we get to 300 somewhere nearby? Or, I mean, I don't know of any, but
In the area,
Sure.
there's not going to be in anywhere surrounding here. It would be more the downtown market that's gonna, from new builds, or perhaps a redevelopment project where it was, like R&T Lofts is the old Des Moines Register building where, everything was just gutted from it and they weren't going from the bones that were there. So there's not really going to be anything similar.
those are even larger, right? Those are,
They're probably around the
Five?
close, most are going to be close to the Vibe. So that 450 mark is going to be, I pulled just randomly before I came, I pulled 7 different properties downtown and they were anywhere between 394 and 483.
and you mentioned the rent, you're not going to be getting any financing, so you won't be hindered with any kind of rent restrictions.
Correct.
Don't know if that's a good argument or not when it comes to workforce housing. How much is your rent on the 447 at the Vibe?
They're going to be similar to what this project would be. So anywhere between 925 to 1,050, but that also has the utilities included in that number. So we promote that to the community as, it's just one price for budgeting purposes. And then that would include their internet as well as all the utilities.
MetroNet?
No,
You don't have to answer that. How many calls at the Vibe now, Chief? You don't need to give me the numbers, but is it a issue?
No, the calls for service at the Vibe are no comparison at all to what we had before. I mean, that was definitely a success from our point of view. We still have calls, but the number you would expect with that many living units altogether. So no, it's a definite improvement from where it was.
And then you mentioned you try to participate in the crime-free program. You caught me on you try. Do you participated at the Vibe? Because that was
we
one of
haven't
them you
received
pitched to us.
we haven't received the certification for it, but we try to do that with our properties. Some of it is just working with the local police too, to make sure that we're at one property we've got where we have to change some locks and redo some bushes. So it's just, is it cost preventative to do that, or can we do it at the properties? This one would be an easy one per se to do because there's not the garden level units with the bushes that have been there for years. They've got the up-to-date locks, or we would be putting new locks on them. So that would meet the code of what would be required for the program as well.
But I recall the Vibe pitch, it was that you're going to participate in this program. And I'm hearing you're not.
As of now, we haven't got the certification for it, no.
If I can comment, there are certain physical things to get a certification, cutting down some trees, things with locks that are sometimes really difficult for a property owner to do. I can confirm they do cooperate with the liaison with Detective Coleman, who's in charge of that program, and we've got a good relationship. And we don't have a requirement for crime-free multi-housing, but a lot of the important aspects they do work with us on. So we are pleased with that.
I can appreciate that. I do, Chief, but when part of their pitch is that we will participate in it, they're short of participating in it, right? And So in this one, you say you'll try to participate. Try, you will or you won't, right? And that goes to my next question of, are those commitments you're making today on the fitness center, the outdoor patio, the laundry facility, the dog run, the bike storage? Are those absolute commitments that you're going to do all those things?
With approval from you guys, yes.
And just to remind you of the process associated with the proposed rezoning, you have the request of change of zoning classification. With that, if you so desire, would be the zoning change and development agreement, which would specify all of the details associated with the change of zoning. So those components around the amenity package or inclusion in the crime-free multi-housing program or other conditions that are agreed to between the parties would be in that zoning change agreement that is recorded and now becomes part of the record for the property. What you're not dealing with that specifically tonight,
Correct.
but if there are elements or questions or components that need to be thought through over the next two considerations, we'd like to have that input so that we are ready if we get to the third consideration, so that you can take action on the zoning change agreement.
I'm not speaking for Shrikant, but I think it would get him closer. It would get me closer if all of these things were agreed on. And so instead of us trying to participate and trying to build these things, that it's in an agreement that we do, because we have seen in some other areas that they had amenities and they've now withdrawn all the amenities, and mainly over on 86th Street and that landlord. And so I don't want to see another repeat of that, of the promises and then the not finish, going over the finish line, right? So I think that to me would be a requirement, but I'm one person, so.
And I would echo that. I do have a question for Doug, I think. Would the parkland dedication, would that also be part of that agreement that you were just mentioning?
Yes, that'll have to be resolved one way or the other. And again, our anticipation is that the resolution is codified in that document.
Your Honor, it might be beneficial for Doug to take a minute just to highlight. I know you talked about it in the packet, but maybe highlight some of the key more substantial deviations that we would have to consider in the zoning, in that zoning change agreement related to parkland dedication, some other things that would be those large, maybe the more substantial deviations, just to make sure the council is clear on those, because those are things that we will ultimately have to work out in the zoning change agreement.
And then I do have a finishing question for the fire chief, but go ahead.
Sure. The primary issues are going to be around unit size. That minimum standard under the current code is 600 square feet. So that would have to be reconciled in the agreement. Parking is something that would need to be addressed in the zoning change. The minimum requirement for multifamily residential is 2 parking stalls per dwelling unit. In this particular case, the existing paved area would not support the parking standard there. Additionally, there would need to be resolution of the covered parking, which would be a requirement of any new multifamily development. Certainly, garage buildings could be installed, but the cost would be fairly prohibitive in this circumstance. The other aspects are going to be around the parkland dedication component for any new residential. There's a responsibility to provide parkland. Obviously, in this particular case, the property itself is not really conducive to dedicating land to the city. So what we did with the Sterling property, which was in a similar situation, was find an appropriate balance between additional recreational amenities that could be provided at on-site, in addition to a payment in lieu of the parkland dedication to the city, which is being applied to the Greenbelt Landing project, which residents would have access to. So theoretically, this project, if they're able to do some above and beyond recreational components, potentially there could be some offset against the dollars contributed, but that's a possible solution to the parkland dedication. Some of the other code-related things, number of trees, percentage of open space, width of parking stall dimensions, things of those nature. You know, those would all need to be reconciled as well for this now 50-year-old property. Those are, again, very specific details that we'll be able to work through, but those previously commented on items, those are the ones that require the most creativity.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah,
Comments?
one
Michael?
for the fire. Do you have any concerns? Do you have any concerns over a project like this, high rise, 265 square foot? You know, year-round living, lots of residents.
I can't think of any.
The windows
Um,
probably aren't the.
I was just gonna say that.
They've got a
Switch
bigger
out the
problem if they're
windows.
gonna use the window. It's a fully sprinklered building, alarmed, all that. It hasn't been a problem property for us. The transition from with the old property that they converted over to the Vibe has been a fantastic transition on our end. So I don't foresee any issues moving forward, largely sprinklered. Huge benefit for that, but I don't see any issues
Okay, thank
from a
you.
response standpoint.
Other comments?
I just have a comment that given the proximity to Genesis, and I know at least the prior owners kind of had a negotiated lower fee or, you know, somehow could use that. I just like to have some flexibility for how some of the recreation might be met. If they were to choose to work with that facility in some way, it's right there. So I'd like to at least make it an option of how to address those needs.
And I have had conversations with Rodney Stevens, the owner for Genesis, and they have an agreement today that is in place where they share parking with foreign exchange membership, a free membership for their residents. And that's worked out really well. One of his questions is in this new, with the new property, how does that tenant population change and that profile change? Will that new profile utilize the gym more? You know, and if that's the case, then maybe there's a nominal fee and not a free, you know, exchange. And we haven't got to that end point yet, but it sounds like from everything that I've gathered that he has there's a strong likelihood that we can work something out too.
Any other questions? Again, we've had a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Anything further discussion? If not, would the council vote on closing the public hearing? And will the clerk please post that vote? Public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0. Our item before us is the first reading of the potential rezoning from C2 to PUD.
Along with any direction to staff that we'd like to see brought back, correct?
I'll move approval of the proposed
Second.
ordinance.
We're looking for an ordinance here,
Sorry, move that
please.
ordinance number 1141 having been considered by the council be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Thank you, Ted. And we have a second. Further discussion. What else do you want to be clarified within that?
I just want to say that I'll be voting against this rezoning right here, based upon a couple of different things. And owe you an explanation. I don't think this is a problem right now, and so I don't want to fix something that, again, is we're not seeing the issues that we did with Sterling right now. I'm afraid of setting a precedent of this type of development for future potentially problems that are older properties that we have up there. And I hate to see us boxing on that. Perhaps in a few years, if we see issues with this property, I would certainly change my opinion. But right now, I'm not supportive of changing the rezoning due to those reasons.
Thanks for setting that out, Craig. Back to, again, we're looking at the first reading, but I think we need to clarify if there were additional parameters you wanted staff to work on before the next reading if this passes.
Well, I'll just speak that for the things that were committed to, I think those are at a minimum we need to have into the agreement, right? Of those fitness centers, the outdoor patio at that 30 by 30, the laundry facility, the dog run, the bike storage, participation in the crime-free program. And, I'd like to see some kind of parameters. If this is what we're pitching is for workforce development, and this is kind of the little twist we're using, then we do something around the rents. Because if that's truly what we're after, then we can set the rents at some fee that is obtainable for that, right? Instead of just letting it go to whatever. And that's kind of against my gut of telling you how to do it. But if that's what the pitch is, then, we need to kind of embrace that. And so I don't know what that number is. They mentioned $750 as rent. Maybe we discuss that if there's a parameter on that.
Are you thinking like a maximum rent is what you're getting at?
Or it could be based on percentage of an income, right? So I know that's a pretty common metric. But not to exceed.
I don't see how that works for any kind of pro forma.
Well, that's what they're pitching, though. That's why they want this program, is they've come from day one to say it's workforce development. Is it or not, right? If it's not, just tell us it's pure profit and we
It's
vote
not
a
low
different.
income. It's just lower rent costs than,
At 265 square foot, which is,
I guess, first of all, is there general consensus on the council that when Doug comes back, if this passes 3 readings, that there will be articulated in the agreement the specific promises that are made? Is there consensus on that? Okay, so we've got that. Now, I don't know about the rent. We got 1 no,
Big
2
government
no's.
rent control kind of guy.
I'd be okay with seeing something along that line.
Eric, you're the,
Here's my, if they're not getting any type of credits or anything, I hate to delve into any kind of a market value and establish rents on that. You guys are business, you establish rents, what you get. I'm a free market guy right there. So I would hate to have the city step in on that. I understand if we're at a situation where it is a type of low income type of housing, but you're not getting any federal credits or anything of that nature. So to me, that's not the place of government to come in and tell your business what you can charge.
so it seems the majority of the council would leave that part out, but go with the others that you've mentioned. So again, what we're voting on here is just the rezoning, just rezoning. None of those other things, those would come back if 3 readings are passed. So
yeah, I just got it because of, in respect to Eric, I'm going to be a yes vote tonight, but I'm like Ted said, I'm a ways away from yes on 2 and 3. And so I'll let it go the first reading, but just so there's not a shock that I don't vote no next time.
well, I think we want to provide clear direction on what needs to happen.
Right.
And
Well, I think the consensus got me to, or lack of consensus. I typically side with the philosophy of free markets and all that, but when you're being pitched something on the guise of a workforce housing, then what is reasonable workforce housing prices on a 265 square foot apartment? So that's why I'm a no. So I could vote no tonight, that's fine, but I was going to vote yes just to let it go through. I think you have your 3 votes anyways, but that's
would
why.
you, would
That's
you
why.
suggest then that either staff or the developer come back with those comparatives for the next?
That'd be helpful.
Again, just to reiterate, this is just first reading of the rezoning. So any further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 4 in favor and 1 no. Good luck. You've got some work to do.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a public hearing on the 128th Street Bridge. And did we publish the public notice?
Hearing notice was published in the Des Moines Register on September 22nd, 2023.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week for a bridge repair project on Northwest 128th Street, specifically the northbound lanes over Walnut Creek. You may have noticed in recent years some significant deterioration on those concrete rails on either side, specifically the east side. So this project would be getting in there and repairing those concrete rails on each side of that structure. We received 7 bids. You have that tabulation in your packet. Always good to have that interest in the project, especially this time of year. I'm sure you noticed the discrepancy in the range of bids received. The high was an out-of-state firm taking a flyer on it, so I wouldn't give that much credence. We did reach out to the apparent low bidder, Cunningham Reese. We typically do not do that prior to award. We wanted to have that conversation to, again, given the difference between the next bid and the engineer's estimate, to make sure there weren't any irregularities with the number they provided. They assured us that they were not, that they were prepared to proceed with that number with the hopes of completing the work yet this construction season. Cunningham Reese themselves, we have not contracted with them directly in the past. However, they have a long-standing history in the bridge industry in Iowa on bridge construction projects and repair projects like this. So no qualms moving forward with them in that regard. So we would be recommending award to Cunningham Reese. Pending that award, we'd be coordinating with DOT on the adjacent Hickman project and I guess Mother Nature this time of year in the hopes to get things completed. If not, I mean, we have a late start date next spring. We can be out there and do the work then. Happy to answer your questions.
Questions from this side of the table?
15 days to get the whole thing done?
15 working days. So
Okay.
3 weeks of good weather. So we'd be counting those days. So yeah, once it starts, it can go pretty quick. There'd be separate closures on each side of the bridge.
And how does this correlate with other work that's happening in the area? There's just been a lot going on there. Will this?
Typically, we would have let this a little earlier. I'm sure you're aware of the lane closures that have been in place for the majority of the past couple construction seasons there. So again, we want them to have access to both sides of the bridge. So we could have tagged on to the one and done the east side, but then the west side is in question. In talking with DOT, they've you probably noticed they've switched to the interior on Hickman. Again, I hate to talk about schedules on my own project, so I'm a little hesitant to talk about their schedule. But their latest update, they're hopeful that they will be completing work on Hickman in early to mid-November and then switching to 128th Street with some closures. So a lot of ifs, buts and ands here, but we could get in right away. The contractor said they'd be able to mobilize in early November. They could tag on to that existing closure. Once they move to 128th, then that closure is going to switch to the other side. Again, a lot of moving parts. Ultimately, I think the weather is going to decide things in early November. We're going to need a good 10-day forecast, a good 15-day forecast if we can get it before we proceed. But yeah, there's some coordination there. We've been in contact with them as well.
Any questions from you?
Yeah,
Michael?
is there any possibility, I'm leery as well, 15 days. I'm also leery is 56,000 and the next one's 122. I mean, it's over double, but they come in, they tear that up, the weather happens. Obviously they get weather days, 1 for 1 or whatever it is. Are we stopping traffic? They get going and now we block that off till spring?
That's really going to be the decision, go, no go, based on weather. I mean, we're not going to want to be in a situation where we have to do something interim on this one.
Yeah, you're not going to do a partial, like get them going. And
I mean, they could do half and then
Wow.
not do the other half, but they have to get that rail reestablished before. I mean, we wouldn't be
You
able
can't have
to
a temporary situation on a bridge, yeah.
I just never seen something half the price without change orders.
We're very leery as well.
Concrete is a third of the cost of the next bid. It's
And concrete is concrete. I mean, everybody's getting the same price. Well,
They do have a good reputation though,
Yep.
and especially Manats, and this is part of Manats, so.
One thing that could end up happening, Your Honor, too, is if we got one side done And then the other side had to wait till the spring. There might be, a change order for remobilization in the spring. So there would be a little higher price, but that's the risk that you run when you're running into weather this time of year.
But why is that our risk? That's their risk, right? If they want to get going and they have to remob, that's on them. That's part of their 56,000. I mean, if they're gonna take the chance in the winter and say you're gonna start in November in Iowa, that shouldn't be on us. I'm pretty strict. I mean, that's reasonable, right? I'm sorry to be reasonable, but
We'll have to have those conversations. I mean, again, I think if it comes to that, doing that in the spring, that's gonna come up. I guess in looking at the numbers there, it's,
why don't we just start them in the spring? I mean, who cares?
that would still be part of the discussion then, most likely. But I certainly see your point. I guess I can't answer all those questions tonight, so we're just gonna have to kind of hopefully proceed, and, there is a chance that we could complete things this year.
Eric, you had questions?
I did. So Jim, love the numbers, right? Love to see bids that are at, 33% of what the engineering estimate on those, but and I like to, again, they're part of Manats. They're reputable. They've worked with other municipalities, but I'm always leery when it's too good of a deal. And I can just smell change orders coming down the road that all of a sudden that 56,000 is 156 is 256. Seen it happen before on larger projects that just seem to grow and grow and grow. So I'm a little leery with this. Again, I love these bids right in here, at least this bid right here where it is. Several others are below engineering estimates too, but I'm always leery when it's just too good to be true. And, so I'm supportive of it, but I'm leery on the pricing on this.
I'm not gonna say I'm never gonna be back in front of you with a change order
I
next
get it.
spring, but
get it.
again, I guess we'd be able to control the costs. And again, I hate to speak in absolutes, but I don't think that number would double.
Okay,
There's a lot of spread there either way, so.
there's a lot of spread there.
Any comments down that end?
I'll just reiterate what, Mike and Eric have said. Like, I have concerns about how low that bid is, but as others have pointed out, there is a pretty big spread. So even if there is a change order, as long as we can manage that, so it's not getting beyond that next lowest bid.
Yeah.
But Jim, wouldn't it be safe to say they're thinking they get it in now because they've got the capacity?
Yeah.
Right?
They're looking to fill a hole in the end of this construction
That's
season.
why the price is what the
Yeah.
price
Take
is.
advantage of it.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
You got some room to work until you get to that next bid.
I just have to air one thing. Careful on the spread talk, because we have a lot of spread, but that's what they're betting on, right? And they go at 56,000. I deal with this every day. They bid on 56,000 because there is spread, and then they get you for the next 50 and say, we're still lower than 122. So they understand that game.
It's still a competitive situation. They didn't know that there weren't gonna be some 70s and 80s in there either. Right?
Yeah, maybe. Concrete is concrete. I mean,
So.
I'm in a
is there-
lawsuit, right? I'm in a lawsuit right now over
Why
concrete.
are we
And
complaining
concrete is
about
concrete.
a low?
Because we'll revisit this one. We
Motion to
will
close
revisit
public
second.
hearing, and we have a second to close public hearing. Is there further discussion? Let's hope not. Is there further discussion? Anyone in the chamber wishes?
Yeah,
to
I
address
just
the
got,
council?
no.
Would the council please vote? And will clerk please post the vote? Again, this is just to close the public hearing. And it's closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specifications.
Second.
Motion is second on the plans and specs. Further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the receipt of bids.
Second.
Motion is second to receive the bids. Further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And the council votes. Pass that 5-0.
Move the resolution awarding the contract to Cunningham Rice for $56,556.
Second.
Motion is second on the resolution to award the contract. Further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote?
Now you better.
And will the clerk please post that vote? And it does pass unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have a proposal to approve a retail alcohol license for Taps Pub. Chief.
Good evening, Your Honor and Council. Before you tonight is a new liquor license application. The applicant is Timothy C. Hartman. The code states that the police chief will conduct a background check. The applicant provided a DCI criminal history, and that was attached to the application. The criminal background check shows that Mr. Hartman has been convicted of 12 different times over the years. I won't go over them. They're all in the memo in your packet. The ABD gives some guidance for the local authority, which is us, to determine whether a liquor license should be issued. And some of the guidance is that the applicant has a good reputation, indicating that the applicant will comply with all laws and rules governing the license. It goes on to say that when evaluating a person's good reputation, the local authority may consider such factors as, but not limited to, if the person has a history of showing disregard for the law, or if also if the person has a history of operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Back on the May 23rd City Council meeting, back in 2019, we're going all the way back to 2019, Tim Hartman appeared before the council to ask for a liquor license at that time. Based on Mr. Hartman's criminal history at that time, the council voted to deny that liquor license. He was advised of his right to appeal by the mayor at that time, and the ABD also let him know by letter that he had the right to appeal. He did not appeal that license. Instead, a week later, a license was applied for by Will Hildreth for that same property. And 4 years later, we talked about this in great depth at the June 22nd, 2023 City Council meeting on a renewal for Taps Pub for the owner at that time, Will Hildreth. I presented at that time a great deal of evidence to show that Tim Hartman, not Will Hildreth, was the actual owner of Clive and had been since the original application back in 2019. I believe there had been false information on that application and the renewals in 2020, 2021, and 2022. At that time, the council tabled it till the next meeting to have both sides time to look at information. On July 12th, the city council ultimately voted to approve that liquor license for Will Hildreth, Taps Pub, but then voted to direct staff to give Taps Pub a notice of revocation 90 days later with a follow-up. To solve the problems as it was called at that time to that ownership. So a hearing for that is scheduled for October 26th, our next council meeting. But before that, Mr. Hartman applied for a new liquor license under his name. So in my opinion, the applicant does not have a good reputation as required by the ABD. Besides the numerous convictions over an 11-year period, including 3 separate convictions for driving under the influence of alcohol. The council denied Mr. Hartman back in 2019 based on this criminal record. And then I believe that for the last 4 years, there have been deceitful interactions between Mr. Hartman and the council, which indicates to me that he will not comply with all rules governing this license. I believe the applicant is here tonight and is also represented by counsel. I'm sure they'll want an opportunity to speak, but any questions for me at this point?
Questions for the chief? Otherwise, go ahead.
I just have a quick one.
Go ahead, Susan.
You know, in looking through some of the correspondence, there was a claim that information hadn't been received, but from the police department, for them to be able to respond to it, that kind of thing. Did that end up being provided to them timely and?
So what occurred as the renewal was coming up, information was passed to me by the ABD that they had concerns about who the real owner of TAPS was, including taxes being paid or not being.
Wasn't that last spring? This
That was-
correspondence from the attorney was this summer.
I'm losing track of what the dates were. It was before this. It was
For
before,
the June meeting.
it would have been the spring of this year. And it took quite a bit of time to compile all this information together. And when there had never been an application for renewal, the application for renewal actually came in on the Friday before the council meeting. So I had collected the information, but the applicant had not even asked for renewal. So I wasn't even sure if they would ask to have their liquor license renewed. So as soon as that renewal request came into me, we replied to let them know that I was going to be recommending that it be denied. Yes, it was last minute information that they received, but that was only because the application came in on the very last day I can get them into the packet.
I would add to that, I think that was part of the mindset of why the council tabled from the June to July meeting, is to make sure that the attorney representing Will Hildreth at the time got that information and had, I know legal counsel had weighed in on that and was part of the reasoning behind that tabling. So council member, I think that's the kind of the question I think you're getting at.
Okay.
So that was
But
part of
that
the
ended up
reason.
Being provided and
Yes.
they were
Oh,
fully
yeah.
satisfied.
100%.
with
I'm
that.
sorry, I thought you were referring to at the beginning of
No,
this process.
No,
was-
that was part of the tabling. Yep.
Michael, anything from you?
Not yet.
Okay, Eric?
Chief, what kind of calls or service do we have to TAPS? Is it a problem establishment? Or give me a rough estimate? What are we looking at there?
TAPS is absolutely not a problem establishment for calls for service for police. The one or two times we've been there over the years, it has nothing to do with the way they're running the bar. If you have any bar, people come and going, there's bound to be something, but I do not have a concern about this being a problem bar for calls for police service.
Thank you.
Anything else from council? Otherwise, we'll have the applicant approach us.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Glazebrook. I'm representing Mr. Hartman in this proceeding, and thank you for the opportunity to address the council, Your Honor, and honorable members of this council. This is a complicated case because it's related to the other application that Mr. Hildreth filed. A lot of the issues are crossover. I'm going to try to avoid talking about as many of the details in the past as possible, unless there are specific questions, because I don't think we need to regurgitate all of those discussions at the prior council meetings. This ultimately comes down to one single theme, though, and that is this is the story of Mr. Hartman's sincere desire to own a bar and to own this bar, TAPS Pub. You know, he became the manager of this bar in 2016. He did apply to get a liquor license for this bar to be the owner in 2019. It was denied by the council at the time because of his convictions. And he is now applying for that same purpose now, with the obvious caveat that in the interim between 2019 and 2023, there was a different owner and he remained on as manager. Now, that story is at the heart of everything that was done by my client during this period. And I think that if we just kind of to set the table a little bit for the decision the council has to make tonight, I think a good starting place might be to consider first, if Mr. Hartman were before the council now, without regard to the last 4 years, as far as it relates to this complicated relationship with Mr. Hildreth, would that 4-year period alone justify granting this liquor license? And then we can, of course, talk about how that 4-year period affects that decision. I think that the council's decision in 2019 had a lot to do with the fact that his most recent convictions, according to his DCI sheet, were relatively recent at that time. I think 2016 and 2017 or 18. But now it's been 4 or 5 years since then. It's been, I think, 7 total years since his last conviction or something about like that. And in addition to that, we have this track record, as you mentioned, council member, of this establishment running in this unbelievably well-run establishment. And we have 0 police calls other than I think there was a heart attack is the one call that I can think of with my client. 0 incidents of violence, 0 incidents of serving underage, 0 incidents of having any sort of problem of that nature whatsoever. In fact, I would go so far as to say my impression when I first received this case on Monday, by the way, was that this is an astonishingly clean bar. I've rarely seen them in my career. And so from the outset, I would think, hopefully this council probably agrees, at least to some extent, that alone is a really strong reason why the council would want to approve this license. And then we have to consider the other side. Now, if he were to come up here in 2023 with that 4-year period of time passing and a good track record in that period of time, I would submit that he should be granted his liquor license. He has tried to own this bar for a while. He was denied. He was given, he was basically told in 2019, too close to your convictions. Let's give it some more time, see if you can keep your nose clean and see what happens. And as far as the convictions go, as far as how he's running the bar goes, he did. Now, the one thing that did happen in that time, of course, is this convoluted business arrangement he had with Mr. Hildreth. Mr. Hildreth, rather than close the bar down in 2019 when he was denied his liquor license, he had to come up with a solution. And so what they decided to do was find an investor, Mr. Hildreth. Now, Mr. Hildreth bought the bar with his own money, not my client's money. There's never been an allegation that my client secretly purchased this bar. Mr. Hildreth put the money down for the bar, and then he formed an arrangement where my client would continue to manage the bar and where Mr. Hildreth would be sort of a more or less silent owner of the bar. They operated that way for the last 4 years. And then because of the scrutiny that was applied, I think the chief would agree, perhaps by the Alcoholic Beverages Division or otherwise, people started looking at the business setup they had. And they realized, okay, we've got the owner of the bar who has an LLC, and we've got the manager of the bar who has an LLC, and the owner of the bar is contracting with the manager, his LLC, to run the bar, and it's very complicated. And the managing LLC is called TAPS LLC, whereas the owner has a WL or whatever it is, the guy's initials LLC. And basically, it creates this convoluted, as some people have pointed out, the appearance of a shell game or a dishonest representation of what's really going on. Now, what I can say is that because of those concerns, my client and his, Mr. Hildreth, started to try to address those concerns before this council. For one thing, they were asked to generate a management agreement, which they have. I think you've had that in your materials. I've got it here, which clearly states the nature of their relationship. Pretty much they had that relationship beforehand. It was just a handshake agreement. So now it's in writing. In addition to that, good evidence of who actually owns this bar is who signed the lease. We have the lease and the lease extension. The lease was signed in 2019 by Will Hildreth, not my client, and it was renewed in 2022, again, by Mr. Hildreth, not my client. Additionally, my client was not earning income as an owner of a business would earn income. He wasn't taking dividends. He wasn't having capital gains. He was being paid as a salaried employee. And per the request of the council, my client has submitted his pay stubs for the last year, which pre-exists this dispute. So it's not like they were created to retroactively prove something. They were contemporaneously generated as the business operated. And they clearly show that my client was being paid as an employee, not as a owner. And then, he also submitted tax returns. The tax returns, I think I would concede, are probably the most problematic of the documents. The tax returns were filed in my client's name, but it does indicate that this business was operating above board. They were getting income. They were paying taxes on income. And the only thing that was wrong with it is it was in the wrong LLC's name. So this council has asked them to amend that and to update the LLC by amending the taxes and getting it in the right LLC's name. I do have a letter. It's not before the council, but this is from the attorney or the accountant. Hold on. And she basically is just saying here in this letter dated October 11th that, she's amending tax returns for the last 3 years for Taps Pub LLC and WHR 101 LLC and the related personal returns. These got delayed by me as we are focused on the current extended 2022 tax filing deadlines. If you have any questions related to this, I can be reached at, and then it lists her email address. So the long story short is they're working on getting the taxes filed in the proper LLC's name as well. And my client is a young guy. I think he's, what are you, 35, 34? 34. He's been in the bar business for a while, but he's not a sophisticated, accountant, lawyer, that type of thing. So when they set this business up, surely they did some things wrong. And I think in previous meetings and certainly tonight, my client is here and is admitting that. They definitely didn't have the separation that you'd like to see between an owner and a manager. But there's evidence that clearly shows that's the relationship they had. Now, the other concession that I'd make is this. His LLC was called Taps Pub LLC. And so when somebody asked him who owns Taps, there were probably some occasions where he held himself out as the owner of Taps. Is that a technicality? Yes, it is. Because when people say who owns Taps, they mean the bar. They don't mean the LLC, the managing company. So was that misleading? I would absolutely concede that. I understand the chief's concern on that. I mean, I think there were probably some statements that were made in the community, whether it be to the chief or to others, that my client came off like he was the owner. But the facts on the ground in the paperwork that we've submitted clearly show that he was not the actual owner. And in fact, this procedural posture comes about by the fact that Mr. Hildreth is now seeking to sell the business and my client is seeking to buy it. And so obviously, if he was the owner already, he wouldn't be buying the business now. But that being said, obviously, there were some concerns about honesty, and I understand those. I like I said, I would concede that that came off as probably not the most straightforward, certainly, and perhaps even in those instances, a little bit deceptive. But the ultimate question this council has to ask, and certainly when you consider my client as a small business owner, is whether the city of Clive is better off with Taps in it, or whether it's better off with it not in Clive. This dream bar that has never had a single service call by the police, that routinely donates to charity, that routinely does a food bank. I've got a couple of people in the back here today. If you want to hear from them, you can, but I'm just going to summarize. We've got Michael Jenkins, who's a retired veteran. He finds community there at the bar. He knows that they do good work in the community. We've got Stacy Campbell, who was mentioned at a prior meeting. She worked for the bar, and when she became pregnant and was left without much support, the bar came to her aid. They raised money for her. They helped her pay for her childcare expenses, and she was so grateful that she named her child the middle name after my client. This is a bar that has done good work in this community and has had zero problems. And if it were to be the case that my client would be denied a liquor license because of a convoluted business arrangement that came off as misleading or deceptive or a shell game or whatever you want to characterize it as, I think that would be a pretty weak reason to deny a liquor license. I think my client has acted honorably and has done pretty much everything right since his troubled youth, with the one exception of the more recent conviction that the council is aware of. So for these reasons, I would respectfully ask the council to go ahead and approve this license. This will simplify the situation. It'll get Mr. Hildreth out of the picture to allow my client to finally realize his dream of owning this bar. And finally, I would just say I'm not the type of lawyer that likes to shield his client from tough questions. We're here to humbly ask this of the council. And so if the council has any questions for me or my client, we would be happy to answer them now.
I suspect we might. Who wants to go first?
So council, you mentioned a few things here that I want to get some clarification on. The first thing is you mentioned before that the council decision back in 2019, the implication at least was that, there needs to be some more time between your client's convictions and any sort of reapplication, right? That didn't happen, right? So, Will Hildreth came in and, separate issue, but there was a solution that they came up with that, right? Again, in 2023, we asked Will and your client to get their affairs in order, get documentation properly, do all of the things that we had asked for, and then basically run above board for at least the next year, right? To come back in 2024. But again, you're now coming to us saying that they're not going to wait that amount of time. So to me, this is a pattern of flouting the chances that are put in front of your client, right? And then on top of that, you've mentioned already that there have already been some deceptive practices by your client, right? Putting themselves out as the owner of Taps Pubs LLC instead of Taps Bar, right? If I undertake deceptive practices, does that constitute good reputation?
Well, to answer your second question first, I was conceding that point because I don't think my client had a nefarious intent to deceive people. I think it was basically taking a shortcut to get around the sort of ease of operation as a agent rather than a owner, and just kind of simplifying it. Deceptive nonetheless.
Well,
And
but the shortcut is the problem that's the problem I have, right? It's a pattern of shortcuts.
I would say that it's important to understand somebody's intent when deciding good moral character. If it was an act of negligence or even recklessness, I would say that's far less serious than an act of, intentional deception for the purpose of committing fraud or something. There's no evidence whatsoever that my client benefited at all from whatever deception occurred, to the extent that it did.
I'm not sure you have to receive a benefit to conduct something deceptive.
Well, the benefit is he got to run the bar
Right.
for the last 5 years or however many years it is. So he did receive a benefit, whether we can prove a true monetary benefit or not, maybe not. But to me, that's a little beside the point.
I think he would have been granted I think he had the ability to run the bar as a manager, regardless of how he held himself out. I think that the question about holding himself out as the owner of Taps is truly related to the technicality about the naming of his LLC versus the concept of the bar. It's a technicality that comes off as dishonest. I don't believe he intended it to be, but it could have been. I mean, I don't have insight into his soul, but you can ask him that question and see what he says. But to answer your other question real quick, if I may, the 4-year interim period, when you consider good character, it's not just did he have a conviction when he was 21 or even 26 or whatever. It's a question of holistically looking at the big picture. And so you do have to consider all those good things that he was doing at that time.
And here's what I will tell you, I 100% agree with that. I'm not opposed to your client owning the bar because of past indiscretions, as long as he's learned from those indiscretions, right? We've all made mistakes in our youth and even a little after, right?
Yesterday.
I hear you, Shukan.
It's tough, I get it. So I'm not saying that there's not a path to get there, right? And I do want to commend your client on the way that the bar has been run. The lack of service calls that's something that is commendable. But I still can't get over the fact that time and time again, it seems to be there's a pattern, whatever you want to call it, deceptive, impatience, whatever it is, it seems like there's always another angle to try to get to the end goal of what your client's looking for without regard for any previous guidance.
Well, and I would maybe partially agree with my client's probably a little impatient. He definitely wants someday to own this bar, and I don't think anybody disputes that. I would just say he has done a lot of what has been requested of him. I mean, he's got his accountant refiling, his taxes for the last 3 years. He's got just pages and pages of pay stubs and taxes to prove that this business was run properly, even if it wasn't set up properly. And I think that he's made significant progress in that regard. I understand your point about, well, they were supposed to wait and give it some time and make this happen under the previous understanding, the previous arrangement with Mr. Hildreth. And the problem from my perspective with that is I have no idea. I have no control over Mr. Hildreth. It seems to me, from my understanding, is that he's kind of tired of dealing with this and he just kind of wants out. And so what is my client to do? Is he going to let the business fail and have to let these employees be unemployed and let this wonderful bar otherwise go out of business? Or is he going to apply for his own liquor license?
Well, that's my last question, or I can concede to somebody else, but my last question is what is driving the fact that, I know Will's not here today, but what was the discussion there? What's going on?
So Will Hildreth he's done dealing with it. He doesn't make a lot of money from this, I mean, so when he got this in 2019, the reason why he did it is he had money, he put it in here financially. We actually did some housing stuff together in Windsor Heights before. So he came in here, bought the bar. No, he knew me. He got his money paid back on that. And now he's going to sell it for the same amount that he bought it from Kevin Cothey for, to me. Now, if you guys don't give me a liquor license, I don't get to buy it. He's still selling it. He doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He doesn't like being called a liar. He doesn't want to deal with city council meetings. It's not his main source of income. It's just more work than what it's worth to him. So the bar is going to sell no matter what. And that's where I want to be here. Otherwise, I got to find a new job too. So that's my whole thing with it.
Can I say, I'm kind of confused by that though.
And
because last time.
he bought the bar in 2019 to give me a job. I have a place where he can hang out with his friends and go to
And
and make a
that's
little bit of
great.
cash.
Yep, and that's fine. And I concede that. But last time Will was here, he basically testified to us that he's really not involved.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything. He didn't even know how much money he was making off of it.
Yeah.
So how could he be sick of it?
Going back to city council meetings, he has to redo all of his taxes and everything also. So with all the taxes and stuff like that, my accountant's working on it. She's getting it all set up for the WRH 101 LLC to come from the Taps Pub LLC, pulling that out of there, putting that into his. He's got to redo all of his stuff for that, through his accountant too. This is already costing me thousands of dollars, let alone his accountant and what that's going to cost too, to refile 3 years worth of taxes, redo all of that. It's just a whole lot that he doesn't want to deal with for a place that he's not making a lot of money off of. It's time to almost cut his losses. Me, that's how I survive. I have a decent salary there. I make money there. And, no matter what, like, it's just something he doesn't want to deal with anymore. And also with all this, in 2019, like I said, when I came in here, applied for it, everything like that. If I would have known now what I knew then, yeah, I would have filed for an appeal, done everything like that. Okay, I was 29 years old. I didn't know everything about this whole thing. I've had liquor license in the past and it was not a hiccup at all. I've had like 3 different liquor licenses downtown on different bars back in 2010, 11, 12, 13. Never had an issue. Never got calls for any of those bars either.
What bars were those?
Big Red Irish Pub, which is where the Copper Cup is now. And then Lucky Monkey and Barcadium, and that's where Tipsy Crow is now. And never had an issue with any of those. Never had an issue with these. Never been denied a liquor license until I got 2 driving bars. And then I was denied in 2019, came here, Will put in money, invested into it. And then also when I do have a chance to get it, I gave you guys a purchase agreement from him between him and I. I am purchasing from it. He's making money on it. It's not like he's just giving it to me for free or we're trying to hide it. I am purchasing this from him. Just because he didn't make a lot of money and we filed the paperwork a little bit wrong. I thought a management company would be fine. He thought a management company would be fine, file everything, but he never filed his WRH 101 LLC taxes. And that's what brought all this up. Now, see, I've been literally from when I heard that and I talked to the police chief on the phone, right away, I came down here, or I went straight to him. Then I came to every single city council meeting since, and I've done absolutely everything that you guys have asked. And even though I'm still trying to buy it right now under the new LLC, what he showed you, the accountant is still doing the taxes that you guys are asking for the LLC for Wilson, even though I'm still trying to get a new one. I'm still going to fix the past 3 years, even though anything that you guys have asked me to do, I'm trying to do. And I'm sorry, I screwed it up or Will screwed it up. I was the manager and I was doing what I was told by the owner, and I messed up.
We haven't had a chance to see that because that hearing hasn't taken place, right? So that hearing hasn't even.
The last 2 meetings, I got everything that you guys needed from that. And then also, what was it? The one? Yeah. So then the one from, get this, what I was looking for. And so then, like I said, my accountant, she sent a letter here, which I wasn't able to get you guys before this. I got this from her yesterday. She is redoing everything. Matthew,
Ed, can I
And so-
interject on
Go
your
ahead, yeah.
question, just so I don't forget?
Yep.
So
Go ahead.
Oh, you're good.
this, I don't know, to me, it's not about what's about to happen, it's what's happened.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I wasn't running, I didn't own the business.
It's not about that. It's about the convoluted twist of stories that have happened. And when the police chief comes up the first time, look, I'm a little embarrassed because I'm like, yeah, I give the kid a benefit of the doubt, right? I got the guy, he's gonna get a chance, we'll hold some of that stuff off. I want to see convictions. I don't want to see arrest. I mean, you heard me.
Yeah.
I want this guy to have a fair shake. He comes the second time, I'm like, now third time, yeah, I gotta listen, right? And so just a question on Ted's question is, you said, so WRH 101 was LLC was paying, you were the management company, right?
Yes, Taps
So-
Pub LLC was the management company.
Taps Pub. So WRH 101 LLC was paying Taps Pub LLC
That's,
to manage.
yes. That is what all the refiling of all the taxes is
Then,
doing.
you are Taps Pub LLC.
Yes,
So that's a straight flow through on an LLC to your taxes and your income.
yes,
But your pay stubs that you just showed us show Taps Pub LLC paying you.
yes. The business is paying me.
Okay. And then where are the pay stubs of WRH 101 LLC paying Taps? That's what we want to see, not
that
you
is-
paying yourself.
And that is the refiling of all the taxes.
But you should be able to show those pay stubs of WRH 101 paying Taps Pub LLC for you to then pay yourself a salary out of your management company. It's fine, right? But you're
initial-
still playing some hide and seek here
No, the
when I
initial-
don't see
So in all-
pay
in all
stub.
the, in all the tax returns, that I showed you, the Taps Pub LLC, everything was going into Taps Pub LLC, not WRH 1 LLC. That's what we are refiling that you guys requested. And so we're putting everything going from, that went into Taps Pub LLC over the last 3 years into WRH 101 LLC, and they're paying it back to Taps Pub.
Usually I can follow this kind of stuff. Taps Last Chance, who's that?
That's the new LLC for everything. Taps Pub LLC and WRH 101 LLC. The plan is to leave those grouped together, redo everything through that completely, redo all the taxes for that. So if there's any question in between any business, everything like that, that's a different
Or if,
entity than this.
or if the IRS wants to come after one of them.
It's still gonna be coming after me either way. My name is on Taps Pub LLC. My name is on Taps Last Chance LLC. Will's are
Well, you're an LL.
WRH 101 LLC.
Sure,
and
unless you did
LLC
your
is personal.
personal taxes
Yeah.
incorrectly, but 8450 TP LLC, who's that?
That was before Taps Pub LLC, and that bank account and everything got, that was when checks and stuff were stolen, so we had to redo everything, basically. And all the taxes and everything like that are all filed for that correctly. Just everything needed shut down for that. And you guys have all the tax returns for those.
Anything else at this point, Michael?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Thanks.
Did you have more, Ted?
Sorry, Tim.
Well, I do, but go ahead, Eric.
Eric?
Yeah, so it is complicated.
Yes.
Tim, we all get that, right? There's lots of LLCs going on and look, I remember back in 2019 too, said, look, stay out of trouble. You know, there's been lots of, is it a shell game? Is it not? Look, I don't know, right? I mean, we've seen but what I have seen is a lot of documentation. My sense is you wouldn't be here right now if Mr. Hildreth forced the action because he wants to sell. So that's why we're here tonight, because of his action for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There is a lot. I will tell you that you brought a lot of documentation to the table. Obviously been busy. You've changed representation. So,
Well-
I like, hold on. I like to see that, right? There's a lot of documentation. You're refiling with your accountant. All these are good signs. You know, I like the fact that we haven't had problems here with your establishment. We don't like problems. And so that's a good thing right there. But the chief's recommendation carries a lot of weight. On the other hand, when I look at your background, it's a long background and et cetera, but it's been a long time since you've had any convictions or had any trouble, right?
Yeah.
Remember, we don't like trouble. So that's a good thing right there that you haven't had. Obviously, there's a lot of alcohol related incidents. I would surmise too that working in a bar, that is a difficult industry to work in when you had those kind of challenges before. Hopefully you've received some type of assistance to overcome those, right? In addition to the driving challenges. But the point being, since, what was it, 19 or 18, there hasn't been any incidents right there. So I'm a business guy. I'm always willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt right here. I'm not sure I can follow all the LLCs, and it's a complicated situation, but I do like all the documentation. Clearly you're trying.
Yeah.
Right? You're making it your best effort right here. So I do like to see that. So that's all my comments for now.
I appreciate it. And one comment on that is alcohol related charges, my last DUI and everything like that. I've only had one DUI since I've turned 21 years old. Things like that were before that. I have one alcohol charge since I was 21 years old. So pretty much I take that as like my whole bar adult life.
Sorry, how old are you again?
34. So in 2006 and 2008, I was charged with my first and second DUI, and I was 17 and 20.
What about 2010 and 2016?
Wait, for driving while barred? I'm sorry, not driving while barred, OWI.
OWI second offense.
2000. Let me see it.
There might be a discrepancy between the date
Charge
of the
date and
offense.
conviction date.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so yeah, it's 13 years since the second one.
Why were you, what were the convictions for barred? Why were you barred?
I lost my license to a DUI and I live in the state of Iowa.
So the barred had to do with the alcohol,
Just kept driving.
right?
Yeah.
And the disregard to rules. So those are alcohol related convictions as well.
No, the driving while barred are not alcohol. Well, stems from my DUI, yes.
Correct.
But then also, just to fill you in, I got my license back on everything. I made a deal with the DOT, spent a lot of money, spent a lawyer doing it. I have to have a breathalyzer on my car until 2034.
Oh.
And I haven't had a DUI since 2015. So for 8 years, I haven't had a DUI, and I have to have it until my mid-40s. So I'm doing everything I can here. So I don't leave the bar drunk. I don't, do anything like that. I try to run a good business, try to take care of the community. I try to do everything I can. So I'm trying to put this all in order so I can actually run the business and do things right. I don't want to deceive you guys. I don't want to do anything. I'll show you guys every single payment made to Will for the purchase agreement that he's actually getting paid. I'll hand deliver it to each of your guys' houses if you want. So.
May I say, well, go ahead, Ted, you
I
weren't
think
finished.
Susan was.
Sorry,
gonna-
Susan.
I still feel the same as I did in the summer, that I really do feel that we may have some disconnects on what reputation means. But it's really compelling to me that you have done so much to try to rehabilitate, to try to run a good business. You have people here ready to speak up for you. I don't know what it needs to be longer than 5 years. I'm really ready to give it a try.
Head back to you.
Thank you. So this is a hard one because, I think we all recognize your efforts and appreciate that, right? And the performance and management of the bar has been stellar, right? So there's no other way to put that. And so all those are positive, and I think we all recognize and appreciate that. Same time, as Shrikant was saying, there's a pattern of behavior here that cannot be overlooked, in my opinion. You have this seeming pattern of trying to circumvent the process and fast track the process, take that shortcut. Again, the way you set it up, intentional or not, sure looks like a shell game to me, right? And now we have what I see. We laid out a path for how you could get back. We didn't have to do that. We gave you a path. Here's how you can get back into our good graces. And now we have a bait and switch. It's what it feels like to me, right?
That's fine, but as I said, we'll sell in the business either
So,
way. I don't have an option.
I have a
I'm getting
question.
stronger. I'm
So in 2019, when you were denied the liquor license, you were able to find Will within a week's time.
Yeah.
What about finding somebody else to take Will's place?
I don't want to run into the same issue in 3 weeks or
Well, but
3
you have a
years
path,
or
you have a path now,
Yeah.
right? So you know what this council is looking for. You
find
have,
somebody else to throw down a big chunk of change. I mean, I found Will because we, like I said, did some housing stuff together. Find somebody else, throw down a big chunk of change, maybe, but I don't want to be sitting in there saying, hey, this guy owns it. I'm still running it the same. I don't want this issue again. I want to be there. I want to be the owner. And could I find somebody to, with some money? I don't know, but that's the last thing I want is because I'm still going to run it the same. And so if the issue is that I'm the owner now and then I find
That's-
somebody else to put money in it and then I'm still running it the same. as
that's
it
what you
is.
have going for you is we want you to keep running it the same, right? We like what you've been doing. I think everybody on the council is happy with hearing that there haven't been
And-
calls. The
and-
problem is that shortcut, that's
And I
circumventing
know
the
it seems like
process.
I'm taking a shortcut is what you guys put it as, but okay, I got there in 2016. I was there before Will. I was there for 3 years before Kevin wanted out of it. So Kevin was gonna sell it. So I came here to buy it. And I got denied. And that was because of driving while barred. And like I said, since everything, I've fixed all that. And, you know, like I said, I'm dealing with the breathalyzer for 15 years, 20 years, whatever. So I don't see that as a short game. Then I brought Will in there. Will, I get it if Will shell game where he's not making any money or anything like that. Will is profiting off of this. Okay. It may not be a lot. He also drinks for free, eats for free, hangs out with his friends there, does whatever. And like I said, he is profiting for it and he is selling it to me, not just giving it to me. So shell game, whatever, things like that. I don't want to have the issue of another person coming in here, something not lining up right. I would rather just deal with you guys directly. I'll come back here every single year for every renewal. I'll deal with, you know, that's 7, 8 years almost that I've been at this place and I still can't get it. And it's been 5 years since any convictions of any charges, period. And the only thing is a hiccup on 2 different LLCs not matching up correctly. If all of this would have went through WRH 101 LLC and I would be doing the exact same thing, there'd be no issue. Or if Will would have filed his taxes for the WRH 101 LLC.
I'm speaking for myself personally here, but I take issue with you calling your IRS, your tax issues, that the refiling a hiccup. Right? It's more than that.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, I'm sorry for all of it and I never intended to do any of this. Screwed up. You know, as far as screw ups go, you know, I think I'm one of the better bar owners in town that are handling it. So I'm not trying to, and even before I was at Task Pub, I was managing other bars, you know, for other people that have, you know, have issues and things like that. And before that, I owned my own bars. So I've always been there in the head part of it. I'm not just trying to rush into this or do anything crazy. Like I said, I've been there for 7 years, 8 years. So, and yeah, and then finding somebody else to purchase it, go in there and then do all of this all over again and then repeat it again. That's what I did in 2019. I thought we were doing it right, you know? And so then 4 years later, I still can't. I mean, is it just, do you guys just not want me in Clive? Do I need to leave Clive, move out of Clive and move the business out of Clive? I mean, which is not what I want to do. I love Clive.
Yeah, and let's be clear. It's not that we denied you because it wasn't a long enough time still, at least not for me, right?
Yeah.
When you came here in June, I was not concerned that not enough time had passed from the previous convictions. It was more of the current situation that you've gotten yourself into.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me, in my mind, has not been fully resolved. So I mean, and I will echo what others have said. It's still a tough decision for me. I know it may not seem like that because I'm grilling you pretty hard, but it's because
No,
I want to understand, because I want to get to the point where I can be comfortable.
I completely understand. Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm there yet, because I still see this pattern and I see this kind of this impatience. Maybe that's what it is. It is impatience, but there is a process that was laid out in front of you and you're trying to circumvent it.
It's not impatience, please. It's the fact I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to not have a place to work. I don't want to not be able to take care of the people that work for me currently. It's the fact that Will is going to sell this business and I don't know who it's going to go to if I can't get it. The other option is, like you said, find somebody else to do it. And I don't want to go find somebody else to do it, hand them my money, tell them to go buy it, because then I'm doing exactly what you guys don't want me to do. So instead I got to find somebody with money to do it. And then I got to convince them hey, watch these 3 city council meetings I've been to, and trust me, everything's gonna be fine in 3 years. You know, I'm trying to do whatever I can to do it. And that's from showing up to these city council meeting, from the first issue we had with any of these things. I've done absolutely everything that you guys have said, and I'm constantly working on it harder and harder to keep on doing it. I'm not just stopping or taking it easy, you know, I'm doing absolutely everything that I possibly can.
Matt, is this a 1-year renewal or is it?
Yeah, this is a 1-year renewal,
It's a
This is a
new application.
new application, so it would be for 1 year. And what would have to happen if the council were to vote, and I think I got all this right, and Matthew and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you vote to approve this tonight, then we would have to request Will to revoke his license, because you can't have 2 licenses for the same address, right, Matthew? Did I get that all correct?
He wouldn't have to revoke it. He would have to terminate it.
You'd have to terminate it, yeah.
And we have to set up for November 1st if it were to work.
Yeah, it'd have to take place
Okay.
simultaneously.
So so that, and then the revocation hearing that's been scheduled for the council meeting would be moved.
And then the other side of the coin, if it is not passed, then what?
If it is not passed and it's a new license, as the council has heard in past situations of an existing license, if a renewal isn't given, there's an potential for an appeal process to ABD. And typically in that scenario, again, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's an appeal, the license holder can still operate. In this scenario, since it's a new license, he would not be allowed to operate during that appeal process if you choose to do so.
So what happens to Will's current license that we renewed and put under notice of revocation or notice of suspension?
Well, and if he chooses not to show up and represent that at the next council meeting, you would be in a position to revoke. And then the license would be gone and the bar would not be able to operate pending if Tim decided to appeal to ABD. At least is the way I understand it. Do I have that all right, Matthew?
Or if
Yep.
Will decided to appeal,
Or if Will decided to appeal
right? 'Cause
the revocation.
Will would be the owner, right?
Correct.
Well, there'd be some unwinding because there's already been a purchase agreement for the bar,
Contingent on getting a liquor license.
contingent on the liquor license. So
So if Will were to show up on the 26th and they're working on the documentation, it sounds like the thing that would happen is, and I get that this is not entirely under your control, right? It's up to Will,
Yeah,
but that would continue that liquor license, right?
you would, if the council chose not to revoke.
Right.
At the October 26th, that would then insure it for a year. So now, because you basically approved it for a year, but then set a revocation, basically a 3-month revocation notice immediately to basically give them 3 months to work out some of these issues. So that's what would happen. Again, Will would have to appear before you and be interested in that continuing.
But then if he got it for another year and then he sold it, then at the point of sale, what happens to that license then?
That I would have to defer to Matthew on when there's a sale of in the middle of a term of a liquor license. Be a reapplication.
that'd be a reapplication.
It'd be a new application of the new owner.
Okay.
So that would set a new year, just like this would set a new 1 year. So the 1 year would now be to October versus the 1 year right now is July. Because we approved it on the July 12th meeting, so it would be July.
Your Honor,
You can
since
follow that.
this goes to reputation, I think it would be valuable to hear from the people who come to speak on.
I do have
that
one more
topic.
question,
Oh,
just
we
on
can.
procedural. So if we were to approve this application, could we do the same thing that we did previously and set a notice?
Yes.
Here, okay.
And you could choose 90 days, 6 months, wait you could wait the full year even, but that would be a renewal. So
You've had liquor license in the past, right?
Yes.
And you've run bars for others.
Yes.
You've said that have had other troubles, right? But
Yes.
which is, what kind of troubles for those bars?
What kind of troubles have like,
Why did you run those bars for them?
if a bar was pretty much failing, for quite a while, my job was either to go and fix it, get it going, hire the new manager, hire the new staff, get it all going, and then I go on to the next one. Or also I was doing construction, building bars, and moved on to the next one that needed to be done.
And those 3 bars downtown you owned
I own those.
fully?
Yes, I own those fully.
So-
Well, no, I was partnered with Barcadium, but yes, I was the owner on them, yes. A owner on them.
Seems to be will of the council to hear from your employees or others who want to speak. You could identify yourself for the record, please.
My name's Michael Jenkins, and I've known Tim for close to a decade. I got back in 2011 from Afghanistan, and a bunch of my buddies were going downtown when he used to own Barcadium. Met him there. He's a fun guy. When he moved out of downtown and came up here to Clive, I happened to live in Urbandale, and I was like, oh, a lot closer to home. Uber rides are cheaper. I stopped over to see him, and it is a family bar. And I mean that in all honesty. It's a great place to go. He always, like, if somebody's having a problem, first guy to go, we're gonna have a fundraiser at my place. We're gonna try and help them out. We get clothes donated. We've done, you name it. We've done it all. And he's always above board. He's always front line and center. If he's there, it's a family bar. He's like, nope, we're gonna make sure this place is clean and tidy. I cannot speak higher for a bar because I'm 43. I've been to a lot of bars in my day, and it's clean, it's nice, it's a good place to go where you can watch the game and nobody bugs you. Everybody comes in, treats everybody well. I can't speak higher for a guy. I get it. I can say myself, when I was in my 20s, I've screwed up. I understand why you're looking at this. It makes sense. But at the same time, I go, he's done I know if you've seen through my eyes, you'd understand my point of view, but I can't transmit those images to you. Long story short, I really can't say higher about somebody. I've been around a lot of people. I mean, good man. And I would recommend that give him the year. You can take it away from next year. What's the loss? I know for a fact that I've done an LLC before and I've screwed up, and it's not hard to do because there's so many ins and outs of laws, which is why we get lawyers. But that's my point of view, and I appreciate you hearing me out.
Thank you. You have someone else?
Hi, Stacy Campbell. I wish I was as good of a speaker, but just to touch on again, I became pregnant shortly after COVID, and in the service industry, you do not get leave, and you don't get much help with insurance or childcare or anything like that. And Tim was the first person and one of the only people to step up for me. And sorry, my child aside, I've seen him do it for many other families in need. And we're always taking donations, and he's like family, and he treats everyone that way. And as far as bar ownership, I've done this for quite a while, waitressing and bartending. There's always silent partners. In fact, the running joke for a while was that the dog was the owner, not, Tim or anything like that. It's everybody's family. And if you take that away and he's not able to figure that out, you take away a family. So thank you.
Other questions? So what we're looking at here is approval of a new retail alcohol license.
I would move approval of a new retail license. I think that we come back and look at it 6 months, give a chance to figure out the sale on this. And if anything, we look at it at 6 months, and then within a year, it's going to be up for approval again. So we've got some safeguards built into it. I certainly understand where the council is with this. It's a lot of information. It's convoluted, but I also think that the applicant has done quite a bit to try and address this. So that's my motion.
So you're moving for approval, but setting a 6-month future date for revocation hearing. Is that
Correct.
what you're saying?
Correct.
Could
That
I
gives the time to
suggest-
take a look at that and make sure that everything is, I think 6 months is a fair time for the sale to go, to move forward with that.
Well, so I would maybe suggest maybe 3 months instead, because we were already supposed to hear about the changes on October 26th. That's going to go away if we approve this.
I'm fine with 3 months.
Okay.
I think that's enough time to have
Yeah.
the ownership issue taken care of.
Right.
Okay, so the motion on the floor to consider is the approval and then setting a date for a 3-month revocation. Is there a second?
I just like to have some confirmation that that's enough from the attorney, maybe.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, other than what's been provided so far relating to the prior arrangement of the business, what exactly would the council like to see in 3 months? I'd like to know for sure.
I think it's just finishing out what we had started in June.
Okay, so
And then
make
also-
sure the taxes are corrected for the past 3 years.
Making sure he's structured to succeed going forward.
Make sure the LLC is proper going forward, et cetera. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That is also one reason why for the new LLC, I did have a lawyer draw all that up. I had him draw up the whole purchase agreement. I didn't, just grab anything off of online. And then also my accountant is taking control of absolutely everything from all the money going into the new LLC to everything going out of it. And she'll be doing the monthly taxes on that every single month. So I'll have all the documentation, all the payroll, everything like that, all in order. She's doing all of it. She has access to my bank accounts. I'm pretty much all hands off on that.
So
So-
with that being said, is 3 month a legitimate, and I agree with Councilwoman
Yes.
Judkins. But 3 months, 6 months, we just want to see this wrapped up and so is 3 months enough time? Or do you need 6 months?
And this
We
is
just
for,
want to see things moving forward.
this is for all the new business to have everything online, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Plus getting these taxes straightened
Plus
out.
the-
My only question would be is
Taxes,
the
the
tax
LLCs,
filings.
the ownership that held us out of the picture.
Yes, so
That's what we want to
as
see.
far as the past 3 years of taxes, all of my side, as far as my personal and the 8450 tax LLC and the tax pub LLC will be completely done. As far as Will's, I can't force him to do his
Yeah, so
taxes,
Will's out of the.
but everything
picture.
with me, completely done, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we can't force,
Yeah.
we can ask, but that's.
Yeah,
Well, again, we're dealing with the IRS. It's just a matter of him filing, not.
Right.
yeah, and so she's actually plans on having this done next week. So,
Okay.
For 3 months.
So again, the motion ahead of us is looking at the renewal, or excuse me, approval of a new license with scheduling of a 3-month revocation hearing. That was the motion. We don't have a second at this point.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Yeah, I
Michael?
do want to see the WRH 101 payments to Taps Pub LLC.
yeah, so.
Not just a tax form that says I made 170,000. I want to see the payment because there are checks to you from WRH 101.
There are currently not. That's what we are refiling everything. That was my point on that is. So
But how did they ever pay Taps?
all of the income was going into Taps Pub LLC. And then it was
Oh,
coming
this
out
is-
of Taps Pub LLC. That's why I gave you all the tax returns for that.
Well, this is worse than I thought.
And that's what they're refiling from Taps Pub LLC to WRH 101 LLC.
So if we don't see that, how are we gonna know it even?
I'll bring it
happened?
to you. I'm telling you.
WRH?
Oh, I don't know, but she's redoing the Taps Pub one, the 8450. She should be getting it's up to Will to have his done. I can't force Will to fit.
I
to do
understand,
his.
but that's a huge piece for me is to see that WRH 101 paid Taps Pub because I've looked at your
Well, you should be able to see that from the income
Right.
coming into town.
Yes.
Right,
From
you'll see on there.
WRA. So in theory, you should. if it's
Yeah.
It
done
won't
properly.
name WRH though, on his tax
I would
form.
think it would, but
Yeah. So,
It's just income. I mean, you know,
yeah, it'll be income coming from WRH 101.
yeah, if they're paying.
And then if
checks to
they don't file their taxes, that's on
We're
them.
we're taking a little bit of a leap of faith. I see what you're saying.
We
but-
are, no doubt about it.
So
Can I
we've got a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion?
I would like to make one comment
Yeah.
first. So, again, from my perspective, this is not just a matter of an innocent mistake that was made on the front end. There has been a pattern of behavior here that has occurred multiple times that taken in isolation, that in and of itself is disqualifying, in my opinion. And I think that's why the chief has recommended to deny. With that said, I'm going to vote yes to approve it because of the way that you've handled the business thus far, and that we are doing kind of a probationary period to make sure you get everything back in line. And so, I mean, this is, I mean, it feels like the fourth opportunity at this point of saying, okay, get it straight. Next time you come before us, we don't want to have to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's
so that's
exactly what I
I mean,
want
I
to.
feel like I'm talking to my teenagers at this point, right? No offense, but that's what I have to keep doing with them. It's like, I don't want to have to hear this again. So anyways, go ahead.
To echo your comments, I specifically remember one of us, and maybe it was myself, I don't remember, but we said, this is the last chance to get everything straightened out back in July, right?
Yep.
And I feel like we're saying that again, right? So
And every single thing that I told you guys I would do, I've done. I can't force Will to do.
Which is one of the reasons why I'm voting yes.
right. And
Right.
so yeah.
If I tell you I'm gonna
that's-
do something, I'm definitely gonna do it.
And that's kind of where I'm at as well, right? Like I'll vote yes, but if it comes down to it again, it's not going to be the same.
Completely understand.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? Vote on approving a new retail alcohol license with a 3-month revocation hearing scheduled. The vote on that is pending.
There is a football game on, you know, that we're waiting.
I want to explain my vote. May I just very briefly? I am voting no. I think you'll get the votes, but I do want to send a message that this isn't okay. And I do believe that there was a lot of trickery done. It's way too obvious. And as I said, the first couple times, shame on me. This time, I gotta go with the chief. And I hope that the council then, in 3 months, if you don't bring everything, there is no excuse of my accountant was out of town or had COVID or sick, or the IRS didn't receive something. It's a revocation. And so you're taking a huge chance here that you're going to pay all this money and in 3 months lose a bar.
Okay.
And would the clerk please post that vote? It passes by a vote of 4-1. Good luck. You've got your work cut out for you. We'll expect to see a lot of information 3 months from it. We're after the 2-hour mark. Is there a need for anyone to take a break at this point? There seems to be. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes. Like to call our meeting back to order after a brief recess.
This is in trouble.
The next item on the agenda is our GO bonds setting the hearing date. Liz.
Grilling everyone tonight.
All right, be nice. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
I'm a no vote.
Oh.
Been saying that for everybody.
Hopefully not. Tonight, we're asking the city council to set the date for the next council meeting on the 26th of October for the sale of the 2023 B GO urban renewal bonds, which will financially support the list of CIP projects for 2024. This action will also authorize the use of the preliminary official statement, which was in the packet. Any questions of the bond?
I need a resolution.
Approval.
Second.
Motion and a second on the resolution to approve, setting the public hearing. Further discussion, seeing none, will the council please vote, and will clerk please post that vote. And that'll be setting public hearing for our next council meeting at 6 p.m. And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you very much. Liz, tell us about the audit.
Okay, so what we have for your approval tonight is the annual financial audit report. So this is the fourth year that we've used Eide Bailey to conduct our audit. We have nothing but really great things to say, and you can see Brad there. Brad and his team have been really excellent to work with. We had it run again very, very smoothly this year. It was virtual, but also it's really nice to work with Eide Bailey because over the year we can ask them for some advice and get some best practices from them as well. Our process went well, and I will introduce then Brad Tyson from Eide Bailey. He will summarize the report for you.
And I think everyone here is familiar with what has been done with the audit in the years past. So we probably don't need a lot of detail of what we've heard before at 8:17. Just saying. Good
Just
luck.
Brad is prepared.
all the good news, Brad, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all the good things.
I can make this short. I heard there's a football game on too. So I normally what I do as part of this, well, first off, let me start here. Thanks to Liz and Corey and their crew, for providing all the information timely and accurately. It really helps from our standpoint to facilitate the audit in a very timely manner. So we did have, with all of the information they provided this year, we were able to actually finish the process about a month earlier than we have in the past. So they've definitely provided everything in full faith and been open to questions, everything like that. So we really appreciate them and their staff providing that information. So in the past, I've kind of went through the audit page by page and just kind of said, here's the different parts of the audit. I can do that very, very quickly. So our opinion is on page 2. It's an unmodified opinion over the financial statement. So no issues with the way anything's presented within there. The MD&A is presented in the next part. That's management's discussion and analysis. Kind of talks about the major changes of the report or major changes from fiscal year 2022 to 2023. And the basic financial statements are presented after that. Probably the most important piece that you're interested in is the internal control report at the end of the financial statements, which is listed on page 50. And this would be in this report, we're required to identify, we actually defined internal control deficiencies into 3 different buckets: regular internal control deficiencies, significant deficiencies, and then material weaknesses, which are kind of like the bigger issues. And this is the same as last year and the year before. No material weaknesses to report, no significant deficiencies, no internal control issues within that report as well. And then there's also a statutory report in the back that kind of talks about if we had any findings, but we did not have any statutory findings. Within that, we're required to report certain things that the state auditor's office wants to disclose. We did not have any issues there. Again, so that's a very, very quick, high-level analysis of the financial statements. If you have any questions, I guess feel free to let me know.
Council, do you have any questions? Eric?
Real quickly, appreciate the good audit. Typically on these, sometimes they'll have any watch items. Is there any watch items that you saw on this?
Nope. So, and I think we talked a little bit about this last year. So actually the definition of a significant deficiency, which we would be required to report, is anything that we think the city council should be aware of. So no significant deficiencies reported within the financial statement audit at all. So
Surely we can find something.
No, you don't have to.
Some grief. I mean, come on.
So,
Great report card.
Liz, great job.
Yeah, thank you.
To your team. We
Thanks for your
appreciate the audit.
Great job by the finance team on this.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, we'll let you go for the evening then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we need a resolution approving it.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Motion is second on the resolution to approve the audit. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And our audit vote is coming.
Always thinking.
4-1.
I'm a yes on that.
So that's approved by a vote of 5-0. Thanks again, Liz. Matt, tell us about MetroNet.
So we have the crew from MetroNet here to provide an update on their project here in Clive. As the council's aware, MetroNet started this project a couple of years ago. They are now nearing their completion, and they have some slides, kind of a brief presentation to show. And I know some council will have some questions and comments for them. They are now jumping into their last neighborhood in Clive. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig. He can introduce the team and they will provide the update. And
Awesome, thanks. Do you have the update coming up, Pete?
I think it's up, it's on that main computer.
Okay. Well, I'll introduce myself. Craig Zimmerman, had the opportunity to present for you previously and certainly welcome and appreciate the opportunity to do so again. Along with me, I have Jeff Jenks, who's the construction manager for our team. And also with us is our Senior Director of Outside Plant Construction, Greg Sorgenfry, actually lives in Omaha, spending a fair amount of time over here in Des Moines. So just briefly, what I wanted to share with you all tonight is,
I'll do it from here. I'll do it from here.
is it?
He's got it on.
I'm not seeing it.
We're not seeing it.
It's the PDF or.
Oh, you turned it into a PDF. Cool. Good deal. All right, just briefly, we wanted to provide you with a city build update. We want to talk a little bit about the construction communication that has gone on during that process. And we want to always talk about our commitment to the community as we move forward out of kind of the city build phase and into kind of standard operating procedures. And then we'll wrap up with and then hopefully open it up and answer all the questions that you may have for us. So just as far as the city build status goes, what is completed to date? Over 7,016 passes. I think there's been a few more since I put this slide up, but 53.8 miles of underground, 27.1 miles of aerial, which is a lot of work by Jeff and his team. So what's remaining? And before I jump to that, what's completed to date is in the green on the map. And what's remaining is in the yellow. We go by what's called LCPs. It's an old telecommunications process, but it's basically a neighborhood area of somewhere around 200 to 500, 600 sometimes homes passed. But we have one of those areas left, 629 passes. It will include 7.4 miles of underground and 0.2 miles of aerial. And Jeff, I think still has it on estimating the end of November to be complete with that last area.
We're hoping we can finish by the end of November, weather permitting, of course. And then we have struggles with locates with USIC. So as long as we can work through all the struggles, the obstacles that we do have, we should be able to complete by the end of November, at the latest mid-December.
Craig, can you explain what you mean by an aerial? I mean, when I think of MetroNet, I don't think about anything.
Yeah, so there are areas that we have to attach to poles. Typically, they're Mid-American Energy poles, and we do fiber on those poles as well as bury the fiber underground.
And that's
that's
next to residential homes?
No, typically not. Typically, our plant may run from one pole to the other, but then as far as the homes go, there's actually a drop that runs underground all the way to the homes. It's typically not done aerial to the homes, although
It just depends on the area. Everything that we're seeing in Clive is majority of the, underground to the houses.
But in the older part of Clive, they're using aerial to get to the house.
Really?
Indian Hills neighborhood that's left, there's some aerial still on University, but the neighborhood itself is all underground.
Right, which is why there's such a small amount left. So at this point, I did want to take an opportunity to thank you, Matt and Pete, Jeff and Jared and Jerry as well, for
for one, your assistance, and maybe I should lead with guidance, but two, your assistance, and three, maybe most notably, your patience. We appreciate that. All right. So I did want to share with you, and I think we talked about it before, we do focus a lot on our construction communication. And we have reports that we would go through monthly with that team to talk about those tickets that have been opened and submitted to Metronet during the process. And usually we're looking at a month back and then go on to current events. But during that construction communication process, we had a 99% plus response rate within 24 hours. So in other words, if somebody enters a tickets or calls our customer service and opens up a ticket and suggesting, hey, I want to know when Metronet's going to be to my home, or hey, I'm real concerned. I got a flyer that you're going to be here. I've got underground sprinkler system. I've got underground dog fences. So we open tickets for those, and it's our goal to always to reply to those tickets, respond to those tickets within a 24-hour period. And you can see here that we've done that at a higher than a 99% rate. And then the more probably telling and compelling issue is how fast can we complete them? And our goal has always been to complete all those outstanding tickets or inquiries within an 8-day period of time. And we have at this point 98% plus completed within seven days. So kind of a breakdown of those number of tickets. And this was from when we started to construct to current. We had 2% with regarding cable lines, 22% regarding customer damage, 58% regarding notifications, 17% regarding restoration, and less than 1% regarding water lateral, which I don't really know what that is, but
If we hit water, I would assume.
anyway,
We get a water line.
yeah, oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant. So of those tickets, again, 53% of them were completed within 24 hours. 30% of them were completed within 3 days, 15% completed within our goal of 4 to 8 business days, and only 2% did we have lag on beyond that. Typically, the ones that lag beyond on that are when we have to do concrete repair. And at that point, we're at kind of the liberty of the concrete folks when we can get them in. And a lot of times we can't get them in for just one small job. We have to pack up the jobs together to do them. But anyway, so a lot of construction communication has taken place since the beginning of project. And I've been real happy with Jeff and his team, staying on top of this, both responding to them and then also completing them. Kind of looking forward, and as the project has gone on, we have a community development team. And that community development team is outside of Jeff's and Greg's area of management. But they deal with HOAs, they deal with apartment complex, townhomes, communities, condos, residential expansions. Typically, it's where there's not public city public streets. They are under their own assessed rules. So at that point, instead of getting permits to build in right of way and in easements in the city, we have to have an agreement with those organizations. We have a utilities access agreement that the homeowners association or the owner of the apartment or townhomes would sign. And that gives us permission and also sets up a path for how we're going to bring the fiber from where we are in the city build into their properties and how it's going to be dispersed inside those properties. So I just threw up a couple of examples that we've worked with here in Clive on those, some of which are done, some of which are beginning, and some of which will go on. If there's new residential areas that come up in land that you annex or in land that you currently have, we typically will work with the city and we'll work with the developers, make sure they're in agreement that they'd like to have fiber to the home, fiber to the premise in those developed areas. And then we'll facilitate that through these agreements. Going on, we talked a little bit about this as well. And it's funny because sometimes there's a perception that Metronet's going to come in, do the city build, and then they're going to leave. That's not the case. We are the ISP provider. We're here to stay. We're here to grow with you. We're here to also participate in city events, sponsorship, volunteering, chamber outings. So I just included a couple of examples of ones that we've done this year with the city of Clive, with the parks, with the chambers, et cetera. So lastly, I just wanted to make sure that that we mentioned that this multi-million-dollar investment in Clive was solely funded by Metronet. We didn't ask for any public, city, state, or federal funds, which is one of the reasons why we're one of the fastest growing fiber to the premise companies in the United States, is because of this model. I believe we had initially had in our agreement that we would get this built within 2 years. Unfortunately, we were a little bit over that. It was, I think now at 2.5 years. I think shovels in the ground began in 4 of 2021. And we're hoping that they'll be out of ground the end of November of 2023. And, the other thing I think is awesome is, at this point, Clive is a fiber-rich community. Not just us. We know there's other competitors that provide fiber in your community as well. But at least from our standpoint, we have more than 90% of the residents and businesses that have access to multi-gig symmetrical service, which if you ask me is the best you can have out there. And I think really sets you apart, sets the city apart, sets us apart for delivering it. So we hope that the city benefits and also agrees that our investment, one, increases the competition, which is always good. I think you'll see that our competitors kind of act and react to things that we're doing. But really, it's the delivery of service, the quality of life, improving the way we educate, we work from home, we entertain. We all feel that we all hope that this is a real positive impact on Clive's continued growth and economic development. So that's all I had formally to share with you. Open to any questions that you might have.
Recon, we'll start on your end.
Okay, thank you. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that when my wife and I picked the house that we picked it in large part because it was very close to a fiber line that was already running. And so I just want to lay that out because I do think fiber is important, fiber to the home. It's something I've been waiting a decade for, right? And I am one of your customers.
Thank you.
But I do want to point out, Clive, as a whole, we hold ourselves to a higher standard, right? City staff does a great job where we get used to that high standard very quickly.
Yep.
I appreciate the communications piece that you put up there because that's something we asked you about last time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you a few examples of where that may have failed, or I heard feedback that it wasn't going maybe quite as nice as maybe
we would hope.
Yeah. And it's not meant. I don't mean to make this like I need you to respond to every single one of them. It's more of I want to make you aware of them, so you can continue to improve.
Sure.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Because like you said, this is a partnership. It's not you guys tore up my lawn and now I'm going to do whatever, right? It's more of a partnership. How do we fix that so it doesn't happen?
Yep.
Right. So anecdotally, I will start with, I actually submitted a construction ticket while my neighborhood build was going on. I did not get an initial response within 24 hours, and I did not get a completion within 7 days. I actually am still waiting on a resolution to that. It was a minor issue. It's not like it wasn't a water thing. It wasn't, any of the other categories that you listed. It was literally, can we add an extra flower pot between my neighbor and my property? Right. That's all it was. Right. It was basically just to save some time by not having to have you guys bore under my driveway.
Right.
Just to level set that.
Yep.
But that is, I'm in that 1 or 2% that you listed that falls outside of that 24-hour and 7-day timeline.
Yep.
There was another incident that I heard about from another resident that was talking about how one of the construction crews hit their current internet provider's line when they were digging. There was communication at the time that was difficult to do because my understanding of what they conveyed was there wasn't anybody on the construction crew that was fluent in English. And so that barrier created a challenge in, communicating that problem. There was supposed to be a follow-up. My understanding is that did not happen, and the resident actually had to patch the cable himself so he could continue working from home. And that not everybody's gonna know how to do that. So it was lucky that he knew how to do that to continue to work.
Can I ask, was this recently? I mean,
Yeah,
just yours and this other one, were they fairly recently?
Mine was back in early September.
Okay.
But this one I think was more recent, maybe just a couple weeks ago, actually, or maybe even less than that. Couple of other items, and again, I'm not trying to do this to nitpick and say that you're doing everything terribly. I just want to make you aware, because as I've said before, we hold ourselves to a very high standard.
Yep.
Right. I noticed on your website that you've taken down your construction maps.
Yeah.
That was useful information for a lot of people, myself included.
Yep.
Right? So, that's a problem I see with the communication, right? It becomes less transparent as to where you're at or what's going on even.
Yeah.
Right. Now we still have our city website that was a resource, but maybe another community doesn't have that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I add some color to that one? That was an issue that was very heated on both sides as to what to do, how to improve it or how to take it away. And in the end, unfortunately, as a result of our competition, the decision was made to pull it down. Case in point, we're in St. Joe, Missouri, and we're up against a formidable competitor called United. And United used that map to go in and build faster and sooner in the areas that we had identified on the map. And unfortunately, whereas I totally agree with you, and I'm on the other side of the fence of full disclosure, let's share everything to everybody. It was decided to pull it down. One of the counterpoints was residents could still enter their address and get a feel for when that construction is going to occur, but it's not nearly as nice and identifiable as it was before.
And I'll tell you, I signed up when you guys first started building.
Yeah.
Right. So I signed up back in April or May of 2021.
You were pre-buy then.
Yeah. And so I didn't get those updates anymore. When I typed my address in, it would just say your service is coming.
Oh.
Right. Because I was already pre-ordered.
So it wouldn't give you those dates. Yeah.
Right. So there are limitations to
there
that.
definitely are.
So, but I
pros and
appreciate-
cons.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's more cons than there are pros for taking it down, but we
But
understand.
no, I appreciate the color because that's not something I thought of. I wouldn't have thought that a competitor would come in and.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's well, unfortunately for us, fortunately for everybody else, there's a lot of activity in the fiber to the premise world. It's a land rush. And when we saw that was taking place in more than just St. Joe, I'm just more familiar with St. Joe, but when they found that was being monitored so closely by our competition, they took that away. So
I want to speak to what you said about with no one speaks English, the person that had that issue. We do require all of our crews to have someone that speaks English on the crews because most of them are from South America. They may not be right there though, unfortunately, but we do require that they do have someone on that crew that does speak English. So I will reiterate that again with our team in our next meeting to make sure that is happening.
Yep. Yeah. And even when my neighborhood was getting built out, I spoke to quite a few of the crew members because it was very hot that week. I was actually surprised that the construction wasn't paused because it was like 105 that day. And I was taking waters out to the guys.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
But at first when I went out there, it was very difficult because, I asked them, would you like some water? And they just kind of stared at me, right?
Yeah.
And I think they thought I was complaining about something.
That's probably the first impression. Yeah.
But, so I do think there could possibly be some reiteration of that message.
Absolutely, and I'll get it addressed.
Yeah, and I think we started also trying to make sure that everybody on the contracting crews has a business card that if they don't understand the English or whatever that's being spoken, then they can at least hand somebody a card that says, contact this. I don't know if we've done that in Des Moines yet.
We have not. I haven't seen it. Maybe that's something we need to look at doing. Because they look at me the same way. I can't speak Spanish, and if I try to talk to some of them, they just look at me the same way. So there is a language barrier there that makes it kind of difficult sometimes. So we'll work on trying to make that a little.
Yeah, especially when there's concerns about hitting a water line or hitting an internet service line. It's important to be able to
absolutely
provide that reassurance that it's going to get resolved. Couple other things. I did speak to quite a few of the construction crews as they were going through the area. I don't speak Spanish, but I did speak to the ones that I could speak to. And I was a little surprised that you guys, not that I'm complaining, because I love that you guys got out into my neighborhood quicker, but I was surprised that you had crews out in that weather, building when it was 105 or, digging and manually shoveling.
With that weather, of course, they're contractors, so they get paid for what they do. We do tell them to work with caution and to drink plenty of water, but if they choose to work, of course, we're gonna allow them to do that, make sure that they're taking the breaks and being safe with regards to the temperature.
We did. I know there was a couple of days, and I think this might have been before you came into this role, Jeff. But we did provide popsicles and had additional water stations available. Interestingly enough, the city of Moline went way over and above. They apparently have these very large water fans that are on their vehicles, and they even offered them up to our contractors. And to Jeff's point, in some cases, we'll ask them, are you okay to work in this environment, in this condition, in this heat?
We did have some contractors that, hey, it's too hot, we're not going to work. And then you have other ones that, they want to at least go in and try to work a part of the day, maybe not stay in all day. But that we kind of do leave it up to them.
We've got a safety coordinator as well that sends out a communications to all the outside plant construction team, is just the city build team, and then also our other construction teams as well, residential and commercial, with weather advisories, whether they be severe inclement weather or not, or heat. But those notices do get sent out to everybody internally as well. So that is an issue. Safety is always a concern, and but we appreciate the fact that you were offering up water.
I'm sure they appreciate it too.
Yeah, I did Gatorades to the crew that was in my neighborhood, and they were greatly appreciative.
So just a couple other things, and I will
go ahead.
Turn it over. But so I think a little more coordination with those teams may be warranted. I spoke to one of the construction crews that came out ahead of time at one of the locate crews, and they were talking about how they had been booked in Ankeny for their hotel. And so they were driving literally, you can't get any further away in the Des Moines Metro, essentially.
I didn't even think about that.
The locate crew, so we actually don't have any control over,
okay,
where they send their personnel.
Right.
I have a call with them on a daily basis, tell them where I need locates,
Mhm.
and then it's on them where they send their personnel.
So we've got like the Clive Hotel.
Oh, I know. If it got me locates faster, I'd be more than happy to throw that out there.
You'd probably have me driving them there.
I would have them deliver.
Last couple of comments I'll make, and these are just comments, and they're a bit tongue in cheek, so take them for what they're worth. I'm waiting for when you guys come out with your 5 gig service. And then this is not unique to you guys by any means. This happens across the industry, but I do just want to point out, I took a look at your privacy notice and your acceptable use policy. The acceptable use policy is in line with what you generally expect. And just to preface, I'm a privacy and cybersecurity attorney, so it's kind of what I do. This is not legal advice though, by the way. But the privacy notice, there's some ambiguity in the wording, especially around, you know, audio, electronic, video, or image information, activities and usage information, where it could be interpreted as it allows you to intercept my packets as they're going through your network, right? And then you could literally see everything and anything I'm doing on the internet, right? I don't think that's what you guys are doing. I think that would be a lot of manpower and a lot of people resources to do
Yeah.
that. And I'm not that interesting, and I don't think most of our residents are. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's just, yeah, there you go. But you know,
You
it's
don't wanna
just,
know.
it's some of that ambiguity in the language that can be interpreted that way. And then even with the CPNI language, you know, that there's a first bullet point. I don't know, I'm trying to look for the section here as I'm talking. But that is, it's a little, I would say vague would maybe be the right word, right? It just kind of says, we'll use CPNI information to provide additional features to the products. I don't know what that means, right? What are additional features? Do you consider deep packet inspection an additional feature? You know, I don't know. So,
And I
again,
don't either.
yeah, it's just, again, that's more of a comment. And
Yeah.
again, I don't think I'm not picking on you in particular.
Nope,
I think that's industry wide, but.
not taking
you know,
it personally.
Yeah, you.
But I am taking notes. And as you may, I'm sure you're not aware, our excuse me, chairman of the board, Mr. Sinelli, is a lawyer, and
Sorry about
you know, it'll be fun to have a discussion with him about those couple things and see when the last time it was reviewed. I mean, who knows when, I don't even know when those were put in
So,
place.
I think
And
September
who
of
knows when they were
2023
updated
is
or
what's
not. The 5 gig stuff. The 5 gig stuff's exciting to me. And I think for some of the first time in my lifetime, we're waiting for other technologies to catch up to what we're providing. So obviously we've got businesses that are 10 gig. We've got some residential communities that are at 3 and 5 gig. In Clive right now, we just have a 2 gig offering.
Which is what I.
But anything over 3 gig at this point, most people are using wireless in their homes. The wireless equipment doesn't support it. And we don't sell it, and we can't support it as well. And so we're waiting for a little bit of that to occur and mature before we kind of open up the bandwidths. But you know, we're seeing Google Fiber, for example. You're never supposed to talk about your competitor, but we're seeing Google Fiber talk about 5 meg, 9 meg, you know, the kind of to residents' homes.
Right.
And as soon as, you know, a company like that starts to talk about it, everybody else's, we can't let them beat us. We need to do something more. So it's coming down the path pretty quickly.
Okay, well, I'll be one of your
Yeah,
customers.
good deal. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it. That's not enough.
Anyone else have any questions?
I know it's been a long evening for you. If you have further questions or comments, I have my contact information in there. I welcome a call or an email or however you'd like me to follow up on any other additional items that you can think of. I know there's no formal vote that's going on tonight, but you can.
So as part of my campaign, I did a lot of door knocking.
Yeah.
Hit a lot of neighborhoods. And I can tell you some of the most negative feedback I received was about MetroNet.
Oh, really?
Majority of the time. Some of it was the communications where they'd receive postcards or flyers saying that you're coming and then you never came, right? And where that happened multiple times. Restoration, heard that over and over again, how it just wasn't appropriate. It wasn't sufficient to what it didn't get it back to where they were. So that was a big concern amongst many residents. I also heard from a couple, and I saw it myself, the depth of the burying of the line did not, what's your standard? What should it be?
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. Is it the line going to the house from the street to the house?
Yeah.
Those are generally pretty shallow. That's a different whole department that deals with those. usually around 6 inches. They're
Yeah.
pretty shallow.
Well, and that's about what I
Right.
saw, right?
Yeah.
And I guess say my
And
own
that,
house
and
is
that,
about
that
6
kind of
inches.
is on purpose. And a lot of times because the other utilities that are in the yards, if they go deeper, there's a bigger chance of hitting them. We found that with the fiber and the size of the cable itself, that it usually doesn't, ground doesn't erode and fiber starts poking up if it's at that level. But, I will tell you that we've had some crews and again.
It just looks
shouldn't poke
perfunctory,
up-
right? It's
Yeah.
just a quick dig and then you just set it down.
Yeah,
put it in
yeah.
right.
Generally, they do. And if we do see stuff that, where they're not getting it deep enough and we're seeing it on the top of the ground, we want to know these, just like, the issue that you still have. I want to make sure that I get you my contacts so that we can get that problem resolved. Like I said, I'm the manager here over the construction.
And that's basically what I
and this
told the
stuff comes
residents.
to me.
is
So
Call Metronet. I can't do
Yeah.
anything
a
about it.
lot of times
but-
the Public Works Department, Jared and Jerry, they get the stuff over to us and we try to get it resolved as quick as possible. I want to do the same thing for any issues that you guys see.
So last question on the HOAs. You talk about utility access agreement. One of the HOA folks I talked to, they were scared off by it because and I don't know what the agreement says, but basically they're absorbing all liability if anything happens, or at least that's the way it was presented to me. Again, I don't know the details.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can shed some light on that. I think what would be helpful maybe for some of these, the smaller HOAs that don't have a ton of reserves and can't afford to take on a ton of liability, is if you could, when you reach out to them and try to provide this service, because we want to get these guys service too, is have what your track record is with the HOAs. And here are the other HOAs that we've done it successfully, so that, where we don't have all, because when you're just showing them, here's the agreement, and oh, by the way, you're going to be responsible for A, B, C, D, and E liability wise if anything happens. Well, if you got a small HOA, they're going to be scared off, right?
They are. And the first thing is it's 4.5 pages, I think, and that right out of the chute is kind of puts up the guard,
Right.
like, oh my God, 4.5 pages. Now I gotta get a lot of legal review of this, et cetera. I don't know about the specifics about the liabilities there. I'm hoping that it's not as much as what was.
Maybe not
presented to
again. It was
you.
just the way it was presented to me,
Yeah.
but I think if you had some, again, your track record with these HOAs in
Yeah.
Clive, where we did it successfully, no issues.
References,
It
whatever.
might,
yeah.
it might be helpful.
Yeah,
but-
definitely.
Because
No, I
these other
appreciate that.
HOAs, they want the option of fiber, right?
Yes.
But their president is making a decision kind of unilaterally, or their board is, that we're not going to do it because we don't have the reserves to take on that liability.
Yeah.
And now all the residents in that HOA don't get fiber.
I think a lot of it's probably just miscommunication. I did a lot of expansions. I've come out from Florida, and I spent the last year doing expansions in Florida. And this is the first I heard about, liability for the homeowners. We treat it just like we do when we go through and do the city build. It's just we have to have agreements in place with the homeowners associations before we can go on.
Yeah, it's probably just proper communication with the HOA board, but I mean, I know we have at least a couple of HOAs here in Clive that are not moving forward because of that concern. So if maybe you could reach out to them, that'd be great.
Excellent. Thanks. I appreciate the info.
I have no questions. Great job, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Likewise.
Well, I'll
Took all mine.
just to follow up on Srikant's comments, it's all about setting expectations.
Yeah.
And so the expectations were set that this was going to be a 2-year project. And when it didn't happen, and I don't know if you read Axios. No? Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
Pete, do you want to step into this?
Thank you, Your Honor. So earlier this week, a weekly newsletter that goes out to daily, it's right, to multiple thousands of people in central Iowa. And even a person who is a former colleague of mine who's in Abu Dhabi right now sent me a note saying that they'd seen my name because I was responding to an inquiry from the journalist saying they heard a question from a Clive resident who lives in the Indian Hills neighborhood, who had heard from a resident or a neighbor that somehow the city was standing in the way of internet providers coming into the city. And while I don't know what the source of that person's information was, I was able to respond to the reporter and say very clearly, that is not where this council has been. In fact, we were one of the early adopters with MetroNet and
Yes, you
did a
were.
lot of work to get information out to the entire community about how this service was coming and how the service, it was not going to be subsidized by the city. In fact, it was all, just as you mentioned before, all on MetroNet. It's not the first time, though, we've heard people get bad information about why it was taking a long time. Was the city somehow putting undue burdens on others? And as we've talked about before, Clive really does take its right of way seriously. We have to. There's
Oh
a
my
lot of
gosh,
them working
yes.
in that space. And I'm looking at my colleagues in the back of the room who work their butt off to make sure that we keep that from becoming the Wild West. So when we have a story then that comes out that says Clive is somehow unfriendly to internet service providers coming into the city, it creates waves that then we have to navigate. And I don't know what the origin of it was, except to say that I know you and I have talked about this issue before in our other conversations. And
Sure.
it's unfortunate in this situation that it came to a head in a publication then that we had to respond to.
Wow.
Mayor, editorializing there, I apologize.
No,
but-
no, no, no. That's exactly.
It was not a pleasant headline.
No, it was not.
No, not at all. Peter, I'd like to get the source
Mhm.
and maybe the author of that piece.
I'm happy to.
And, you know, maybe there's something that we can do in questioning or in commenting as well, but if that came from anybody at MetroNet that gave that information, that's beyond reproachable. I can't imagine that was the case.
We don't know.
No, it
Yeah.
just goes back to say, you know, there were expectations. It had been so long in this area is the last area. And it had been more than, well, it's 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That they've been, many of them probably gave postcards and, you know, we're coming and all this other stuff. So all about expectations. Their expectations weren't met. These rumors started and then we get a black eye in the media.
Yeah, expectations and communications are the key, and we did. I mean, we fumbled along the way, and we were very candid about it in our meetings. Sometimes, you know, with a lot of emphasis, and rightly so. And you know, had we not had some issues, we would have been well within that 2-year period. And we apologize. We went over that. But not as bad as I thought when I initially saw when we had first shovels in the ground. But yeah, I agree with you. You know, communications and expectations are very critical. I was in a ICMA conference where all the city managers from across the United States came in, and I couldn't tell you how proud I was and bragging about, you know, the Clives of the world, the Iowas of the world where I'm from, and the adoption of fiber to the cities. And it's really exciting, and commend you on what y'all have done, not just with us, but with the other providers as well. And again, I think competition is going to have your other providers stepping up too. So your residents and your businesses are going to have great options. Hopefully they pick us, but they'll have great options.
I was there. I walked by your booth. I didn't see you there, but
Oh, were you really
Yeah,
there, man?
I was there.
I saw your name on the attendee list.
Yeah,
but
I
then
walked by, but I
Oh, you
didn't.
did?
You weren't at the
You
booth
should
when I
have
was
said-
there. I didn't see you there.
Oh.
So sorry, Craig.
No,
I
it's
was
all
there.
right. I'm
Thank you
sure
for
I took,
coming.
I was
We
taking a break.
appreciate
it. Thank you.
Sorry. I
Yeah,
missed you.
no, it's all right.
Did you have a good trip?
Yes.
Good. It was a good show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
I just would like to finish here on to reinforce what Pete said in terms of the guys in the back of the room, Jeff, Jared, and Jerry, in terms of Public Works' work to stay on top of it and trying to help our residents meet those expectations, particularly on restoration. I know they were on top of the MetroNet guys and they would agree with that as well. But they've a lot of hard work from that group in the back to make this project a success.
No doubt.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks. Now you're free to go. We'll go to reports. Pete.
Thank you, Your Honor. So if you would, please watch for an email coming to your official addresses for the city for your cyber training. We need everybody to complete that here in Cybersecurity Month. It's very short, has some excellent information that will serve you not only as your capacity with the city, but also in your other capacities. I had a good opportunity to attend the MyLog meeting with the mayor. There was an update from Robert Palmer with the League of Cities, talked about a number of issues, income taxes, maybe some TIF legislation, number of others as well. We'll see where the legislature decides to take us as we go into the start of 2024. We League of Cities and ISWEP had a good webinar this week that I helped present on stormwater regulations, specifically about the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual and the useful tool that's been to Clive and a number of other communities to create standards that all of us can point to that are evidence-based, that are experience-based, and that are science-based. And that's where we really want to keep pointing ourselves as we continue to improve the way we manage stormwater across the state of Iowa. And finally, we have over 100 applicants for the communications position. And applicants are, the due date is the end of day tomorrow, so we're probably going to have another 20 by the time it's all said and done. And we're seeing very, very good quality. So I think we're going to have a great opportunity to put a good candidate field together for interviews.
Great news. Thank you. Anything else, Pete?
Oh, yeah.
Recon.
Real quick, I know the council saw and mayor saw the letter from Michael, the CHS president. I know we've had some on and off discussions about what that Clive Historical Society looks like in the future. There's been some discussions on their end, not some, a number of discussions on their end as well. There is an interest in transforming, as you know, they met with Matt and Pete, I think last year, or was it?
It was about a year ago.
Yeah. There is interest in that, but right now the essentially what it comes down to is the work that is continuing to be needed to be done at Swanson House is taking up quite a bit of their available funds every year. And so it limits anything else that they can do. And that's also, I mean, I don't want to lay it all at the feet of that, but it is also limiting as far as building enthusiasm to grow the council and be able to do some turnover on leadership so that it's not the same people that are committing to this, this engagement. So they've got some challenges, continuing to work with them, but getting creative with Swanson House would go a long way to helping alleviate that issue and allowing them to continue. That's all I have for report.
Nothing on Dart?
I was out of town for the last Dart meeting, so Mike is gonna provide some information.
All right, Ted.
The Animal Control Board met on Monday. We had a formal hearing, which may have been the very first time we've done a formal hearing. I've been on the control board for 13 years. I know we had an informal one a long time ago, but I won't go into the details of the hearing itself. But those are always very, very difficult. The chief did a really good job in presenting all the information and having witnesses to testify and provide, one side of the case. And then we had the dog owner also present her side. I thought, we had a very thoughtful and deliberate and sensitive deliberation to come to the conclusion. The good news about the convening of that board is Christina did a really great job in kind of putting together the parameters and the structure for how we need to do these. Again, we haven't had one in a long time, but now we kind of have that structure in place. So if it happens again, we need to do it. We know how to go about that.
Hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah, hopefully not. Maybe another decade or two would be great. But if it does come up, we've got that in place now, those procedures and that structure. So.
And can you indicate what the ruling was? Or
yeah, again, it was very challenging. It's one of those, either way you go, it's going to be, a difficult decision. At the end of the day, we did decide that the dog did meet the technical definition of a potentially dangerous dog. And so the owner does have certain requirements that she's going to have to meet. And she'll be working with the chief on that. Although it's our understanding that, at least verbally, she said that she's going to be moving. She's not obviously very happy with her neighbors. So it may become a moot point, but at least at this point, we made that rendering. And so she's supposed to work with the chief to put in place all the mitigating, factors that she's supposed to do.
So you confirmed the police chief's recommendation, is that correct? Just for the record.
Which is what we almost always do. So.
Will say it was interesting to be on that side of the table, actually voting on something
Right.
as one of the members. So I appreciate all of you. When
was
sometimes the
Matt and
decisions
I.
that votes you have to make, I was actually voting on that board.
It
So
was a very hard.
it was
hard-
tough.
Yeah.
It was
I
tough.
mean,
I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record between that hearing and this, but just to reiterate, the potentially dangerous dog warning does not, or label does not come with any sort of seizure or you know,
Impounding or-
impounding, anything like that. It's more of just a set of requirements that the owners then has to abide by.
And maybe some code things that we might want to clean up in that particular ordinance too, that we talked a little bit
After
about
we
that night
reviewed
in terms of, Chief talked about it in terms of the fence, the burying of the fence underground, and something though, it's on our list to look at.
Beaver, you've been on that board 13 years and met once.
That's the first, well, no, we did have an informal one with Denny back when Denny was city manager.
I've been on it for a year.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. That's our first formal one, so,
Lucky you.
yeah,
Anything else to
that's it.
Eric?
Yeah, a couple of things. The mayor and I were at the MAC meeting. We got some updates, one of which was on the Talk It Up, Lock It Up about gun safety right here from Polk County Health Department. Very interesting. But they offer free gun locks for residents. So that was interesting. Also got some updates on, what's going on up on the Hill and how it could affect municipalities. Also attended the out at Camp Dodge, the Our Army National Guard had a number of different local business and community leaders out there talking about Camp Dodge and how if we needed to use that, it's always an opportunity out there. There's facilities, there's conference courses, things of that nature. So they want to be good community partners and are reaching out more with that. Jackie Spellin is their new PR director out there, the first military individual too. So trying to get a little bit more opening to local communities and working with them. And it's also good to see my old friend, formerly Major Osborne, now Brigadier General, actually Major General Osborne, who's the new Adjutant General of our Army National Guard, recently promoted by Governor Reynolds. So it's good to connect with him. That's it.
Anything else? We'll just follow up. Chief, you've got plenty of locks, right?
Yes, the gun locks are actually given out by the local police departments, and we've got them at our front desk, so open during any business hours, stop in and get a gun lock.
Very good. Thank you. Susan?
Attended a couple of ribbon cuttings with the airport terminal and the senior living facility today, and Bravo Finance Committee, and that's it.
Michael?
I was lucky enough to be at the DART meeting.
You're welcome.
And the discussion was the funding and whether Des Moines was going to take up their extra funding or not. They did not commit on that call, though they said they would do something somewhere. Josh mentioned January for some odd reason that it would probably get to the council.
So
after the election.
January,
After the election.
January is basically, if the decision isn't made by then the service cuts have to be seriously, like basically it's a no, go around that deadline.
And I'm not, yeah, I think some say that, right? But they're still trying to, on that call,
Yeah.
show some double books.
Yep.
And I spoke for myself at that moment that that's not what I wanted. I wanted some real books. And then you can show me if you get your funding from whoever, show me that as well. They did try to go around to every member and ask them their opinion on if they would go above their level. And my message from this council was, why don't you wait for Des Moines to make a decision and then come back to this council and we'll discuss it. But that I don't think we have an appetite until Des Moines makes a decision, because even us plugging a hole without Des Moines is route cuts, right? So don't put us on the hot seat until Des Moines gets on the hot seat. That was my answer. That it didn't go over very well, as you all can imagine. Maybe it was the messenger, but
You're used to it. I mean, there were others that raised that at the meeting before too, right? Like it kind of, it's really hard for any other community to make a decision without knowing the biggest piece of the puzzle, right? Which is Des Moines.
And the core routes, where all the core routes come out of.
Yeah, exactly. And so the only other thing I'll add is we did talk about, not at the last meeting, but the one before, about making sure that as the DART staff is going around to communicate these potential changes, there needs to be an understanding of what worst case looks like, right? So it can't just be, hey, as long, kind of going back to, last year when we were having discussions on budget and everyone was like, well, as long as we get our diversified funding, then all of this can happen, right? Well, you don't have that. So what do you do if that doesn't happen, right? So that kind of came up in a different context, again, with respect to, we need to make sure we're being transparent with these communities as to what that worst case service cut looks like.
the last thing I'll say is they did start getting into those cuts in some discussion, and Grimes has mentioned that they're not happy with their access. I actually took issue with a comment that was made by a DART staff member that said, if they're not happy, we'll cut their route. And if they're thinking about voting no against DART, then that's obviously one that we'll put up as a cut. Said just basically like that. I said, why in the world would you just threaten them on this phone call that you're going to take their one route that proportionally, they said everybody has to give. I said, give what percentage? At what proportion per your city? So you're telling me Grimes has to take 100% hit if we do cuts? And I think they're just going after that scare, right? And I said, you need to leave Grimes alone. I didn't have any fight in Grimes, but leave Grimes alone. Don't even mention it. You've just now told them to drop out.
Right.
Because if you don't get your funding there, you're going to pull their route. If I'm Grimes, I pull out right now.
And that's surprising because everything that was discussed before was the core of those, like 90% or, I don't know the actual percentage, but the majority, if not pretty much all of the cuts, were going to come from the Des Moines area because that's where there's the most number of routes.
That conversation was everybody needs to take a hit. That everybody needed to take a little bit of the pain, and then Grimes was talking about it. So I obviously, as you can imagine, went off on about 5-minute talk about that and the proportionality of it, and why would you ever even say that when Grimes is on the phone? And Grimes actually had their elected on instead of their city manager for this reason. But anyways.
Any other good news?
No.
Good times.
That's it.
Legal counsel.
No report, Your Honor.
Pat?
Just a few items, as I mentioned in the Metronet presentation. I was at the ICMA conference in Austin last week. Great time to kind of get away and work on some professional development. So I appreciate the council's support for those activities. We'll mention on Monday, Richard, myself, and members of the design team for the Greenbelt Landing. And we'll be interviewing 3 different construction managers for construction manager as agent for that project, Ryan, DCI, and McGow. So we got some good proposals from those 3. And we'll either that second meeting in October or that first meeting in November be hopefully bringing back a recommendation for a construction manager for that significant project for our community. Susan mentioned, Councilmember Jenkins mentioned, I was at the ribbon cutting with her as well. For Meadowview, great project. Again, another senior living community, huge investment in our community, right by Shule Elementary. And they talked a lot about how they're going to be doing some intergenerational work with the school kids and the folks at that facility, which I think is great. Then just 2 reminders on dates for the next couple of weeks. Monday, we have our governance workshop. I know the mayor had shared a memo from Lyle in terms of some things for y'all to think about as you head into Monday. I will reshare that tomorrow. And then at the end of the month on the 28th, social gathering at my place for you all. So just some reminders on that. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Matt?
Central
Otherwise,
Iowa Water, are we going to be hearing any more? about
Yes.
that?
Oh, that's, glad you brought that up. I am hoping, actually, Neil and I were just having some emails on that, today. He's done his review of it. He's been doing the review. We don't really have any legal concerns with the way that the agreement is worded. I have, staff and I have a video call, conference call with PFM next week. As I've asked Matt Stoffel, who's presented for you before, he's kind of developed the model of what the financial impacts are. I'm having him update that model because what we've been told is Altoona and Bondurant have decided not to be a part of the initial membership group for certain reasons. So the agreement's been modified to reflect that, and now the financial modeling is also being modified to reflect that. I don't think it changes a whole lot for us in terms of the very positive financial picture it is for us to look at that, to be a member of that group. But I want to check that, and my hope is to have something for you on the 26th, but no later than the first meeting in November to come back to this council and then talk with you a little bit about, is there any special ways that you want to communicate that to the community? I know the 3 utilities have decided to do a series of public hearings, and I think that was partially just because of how this has been discussed amongst the Board of Trustees. I don't necessarily see that as a need for Clive. I think this council represents the ratepayers in this community and represents it very well. And for us, it's a different decision than it is for those utilities in terms of having those big physical assets that they're going to be contributing to the overall group as a part of this. But anyway, I'll want to get your read on that as we come back with that updated review, because now we're getting to the decision point of actually voting on it. Again, everything that I'm seeing is still a very positive picture for Clive, like it was the last time we presented it to you, in terms of what it means for our ratepayers going forward, and also now having a seat at the table, a voting seat at the table for regional water production. And that's another choice that we need to talk about, is who's going to be the city's representative for that. Will also need to be determined here if we are members, probably around the first of the year. Their plan is to seat a board relatively early in 24, and then the actual operation commencement will come a little bit later after that, because there'll be operational agreements with the 3 utilities to make up the big group. But we'll get into all those details. But thank you for bringing that up, because that is something that's coming.
anything else before we adjourn? I'll make a supplemental dark comment. As I was looking over in front of Michael, I thought it was somewhat ironic that that toy electric bus runs better than the real ones. It actually moves.
It's not bankrupt either. It is not bankrupt.
It wasn't bankrupt when I left as the primary.
On that note, we'll adjourn at 9:18. Thank you.
I left